I'm leveling up my stats in Marvel. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 1, Is the Ancient One My Psychologist? Although completely different from the bald, monk-robed figure in the movie, the appearance is almost identical. Could it be you? The Ancient One, name, Russell, mortal, lifespan, 25/250, constitution, 100, perception, 100, spirit, 100, talent 1, energy absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points, default lifespan. Talent 2, attribute transfer, lifespan, can be converted into constitution, perception, and spirit. Description, upgrading, approximately 7 days remaining. 3 months. This is the result of Russell's 3 months of hard work in New York, USA, on Earth and the Marvel Universe. Although the panel's rating is mortal, with 100 in each of the 3 attributes, a single arm strength of 1 ton, a body that can withstand pistol bullets, super fast reaction speed, and mental attacks, Russell can at least go toe-to-toe with Captain America. When he first transmigrated, Russell was overjoyed to see Talent 1, energy absorption. But he never expected that these days, even cheat codes are starting to engage in false advertising. After testing, it was found that this talent absorbs physical energy such as light, electricity, kinetic energy, and heat, but the power is limited and the conversion efficiency of attribute points is low. Russell didn't try nuclear energy, afraid of dying, but he estimated the effect would be similar. However, there's a special energy absorbed from the soul, which is absorbed quickly and converted efficiently. As for the maximum power of absorbing this special energy, Russell hasn't measured it yet, he's poor. This special energy seems to be a magical energy related to a person's good and evil deeds in life. The more virtuous or evil a person is, the more energy they provide. According to Russell's observation, gangsters provide some, more or less. In the past 3 months, Russell has also attended many philanthropists' funerals. He gained a total of 1 attribute point. That's less than spending a day in the hospital. More than 20 days ago, after Russell added all 3 attributes to 100, the panel indicated that he could upgrade, with an estimated upgrade time of 1 month. Russell chose to upgrade without hesitation. A few days ago, a large-scale gang fight occurred in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan's West Side. Although the panel was still upgrading and he couldn't add points. But adhering to the spirit of thrift, where waste is shameful, Russell still managed to sneak into the scene and absorb a large amount of energy, gaining over 200 attribute points. Unexpectedly, he got an upset stomach. These past few days, depression, loneliness, and isolation had overwhelmed him. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't speak, and couldn't move. It was truly unbearable. Russell was a transmigrator and hadn't made any friends in the past 3 months. He decided to see a psychologist. The Big Apple, Manhattan. A private psychological counseling clinic, Yayo's home. He knocked. Come in. Russell stepped forward and pushed open the door, a rich and refreshing fragrance filling his nostrils. Before him stood a woman dressed in black, with short, platinum blonde hair, sitting and looking down at documents. Dr. Yayo. Dr. Yayo looked up, smiled slightly in welcome, and gestured, Mr. Russell, please sit down. The moment Russell saw Dr. Yayo's face, he was startled. Although completely different from the bald, monk-robed figure in the movie, the resemblance was almost identical. No way, could it be you? The Ancient One? Russell was dumbfounded. This time traveler had delivered himself to his door? Mr. Russell, would you like coffee or tea? Tea. While Dr. Yayo got up to make tea, Russell calmed himself. Since he was already there, he might as well make the best of it and get a psychological consultation first. A short while later, Dr. Yayo finished making the tea and sat opposite Russell. Mr. Russell, thank you for waiting. May we begin? Yes, Mr. Russell, you wish to receive treatment related to depression, is that right? Yes. How long has it been going on? About a week. The conversation was simple. Dr. Yato asked Russell some basic questions about his background, age, occupation, family, etc. While Russell answered, she carefully observed his micro-expressions and movements, constantly analyzing and recording them. Similarly, Russell was observing Dr. Yato. Dr. Yato was very professional in her questioning, listening, and guiding, just like a real psychologist. Perhaps she really was a psychologist. But no one said that the Ancient One couldn't be a psychologist. Russell took a sip of tea to moisten his throat. The aroma of the tea was poetic, soothing his mood. "Russell, what's your job?" Dr. Yato asked, omitting the word sir. Reading room administrator. Being a reading room administrator was his main job. Fighting crime was just a side job. Instigating gang wars, double-crossing. Is there any pressure at work? No pressure. He was his own boss, and he slept in every day. Do you have any conflicts with your colleagues? No conflicts. Without colleagues, where would there be any conflicts? Can you tell me about your daily interactions with your colleagues? I don't have any colleagues. Russell, you're quite humorous. Dr. Yato smiled. Russell lowered his head and took another sip of tea. I run my own reading room. Dr. Yato refilled Russell's cup of tea, and a fragrant aroma wafted out. What about your family? I'm an orphan. I'm sorry, it must be tough being alone. It's just a few hardships. Russell, how about we talk in a different way? Sure. Dr. Yato got up and adjusted Russell's chair to a reclining position. Meanwhile, she sat down to Russell's right. Russell, do you feel lonely when you're alone? Yes, when I have nothing to do. What do you do to relieve loneliness? Play games, watch movies, read novels, playing attribute-building games, watching gangster movies, reading the novel The End of the Heavens. Do you live alone now? Yes. Have you considered finding some roommates? Or hiring some staff to help you manage the reading room? Is that your suggestion, Dr. Yato? Yes, okay, I will. After a long while, the conversation came to an end. Want to take a nap? Russell responded lazily, closing his eyes and feigning sleep. Dr. Yato got up and quietly left. Was Dr. Yato really the Ancient One? Aside from a similar appearance, the two had no other similarities. But they were too alike. Russell didn't believe in coincidences. Suddenly, a faint fragrance wafted in, carrying a refreshing and pleasant scent. The fatigue from recent lack of rest was soothed, and with a sense of unease, Russell drifted off to sleep. Sometime later, Dr. Yato returned to Russell's side. Dr. Yato, no, the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme, looked at the sleeping Russell and shook her head with a wry smile. What an impatient little fellow. He can't sit still for even a month. But finding him here is fate. Bang! She slapped away the invisible black mist surrounding Russell. Next time, don't eat random things. With a sigh, a portal silently opened. The Ancient One stepped out and vanished. Absorbing energy to strengthen the physique, strengthening the physique to absorb more energy. After reaching its limit, the physique can undergo a transformation. Truly a remarkable talent, worthy of observation as a candidate for Sorcerer Supreme. Would you be a better choice, Russell? Contract signed. Please continue reading. Chapter 2: Encounter with a Ghost Spider. The days were long and the night air was cool. Russell slowly awoke, feeling incredibly comfortable. He got up, stretched, and looked around. He was the only one left in the consultation room. Dr. Yato had already left, leaving a slip of paper on the table. He picked it up and saw it was a consultation schedule. The time was every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. There was also a note on the slip. If you need any changes, Russell, you can adjust them on the slip and leave the note. I can arrange things flexibly according to your schedule, Dr. Yato. Without making any changes, he put the slip back. He left the consultation room, got into his car, started the engine, and launched off. With a roar, he drove away from Manhattan and headed towards his apartment in Queens. The New York night was enchanting, but there were few pedestrians on the streets. Even fewer beautiful and elegant young women. Unfortunately, Russell encountered one. A blonde girl being followed by a vampire. Young lady, you seem to be in some trouble. Do you need help? Russell pulled over and rolled down the window to ask. The girl turned to look at Russell, her eyes unreadable. She seemed to want to say something, but didn't know how to begin. Taking advantage of her momentary daze, Russell carefully observed the person before him. Short blonde hair, blue eyes, a pretty face, and a tall figure. A student about 1.65 meters tall and around 18 years old. Russell quickly made his judgment, then became puzzled. While judging by appearances wasn't good, a girl like this should come from a good family and be well-mannered. Why would she be alone on the streets of Queens at night? Bang! Hey, kid, don't meddle. The vampire extra who had been following him quickly caught up, slapping the car roof and yelling, "I hate vampires." With a sigh, Russell casually pulled out a UV flashlight and shone it on the vampire extra. Vampires, Blade Runner version, a race afraid of silver, garlic, and UV rays, a bunch of fatal weaknesses yet strangely confident. They reek of blood, and killing them wouldn't even drop attribute points. Unlucky. The girl, regaining her senses, looked at the vampire extra reduced to ashes, sighed, and shook her head with a wry smile. "I was planning to lure him out and find the girl he kidnapped through him, is that so?" "I'm sorry for ruining your plans." Russell gave an awkward smile. Had he misjudged her? An ordinary person wouldn't be completely unfazed by the scene. "Never mind, you meant well." With that, the girl turned and pulled up her hood. She shot out a web, which swung into the night sky, her voice fading into the distance, leaving only a white silhouette. "Anyway, I've memorized his scent, I'll just search the area." Spider-Woman, it's Ghost Spider, the person who had vanished into the night, only their voice echoing in the distance. What's wrong with this world? This morning, she went to the doctor, and the psychiatrist seemed to be the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. Returning home at night, she rescued a little girl and encountered Spider-Woman. No, it's Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider, that should be Gwen Stacy, right? But George Stacy is only around 30 years old. Is it someone else? Was it from a parallel universe? Puzzled, Russell returned to his small apartment. It was a 7-story old building, the 7th floor was residential, and the bottom 6 floors were a bookstore. The layout wasn't Russell's original plan. A few days earlier, he had bought a building from a young woman named Hong Fei. She was willing to sell it below market price, on the sole condition that the bookstore be retained. The building was left to her deceased parents, and the bookstore was their life's work. Considering the discounted price and the need for a job to pass the time, Russell agreed. Back in his room, Russell turned on the television, hoping to find some entertainment. Urgent notice: 2 unidentified flying objects are engaged in combat over New York City, both carrying lethal weapons. Local residents are advised to take cover and avoid going out unless absolutely necessary. The television suddenly broadcast an emergency notice. Footage from the station showed a huge, silver-gray robot standing on the road, its massive mechanical arm raised high above its head, clutching a gold-red robot. Cars were scattered haphazardly around him, and people were fleeing in panic. Russell recognized the scene. The 2 robots were none other than Ironmonger and Iron Man. This scene was the ending of the movie Iron Man, where Tony Stark battles his godfather Obadiah Stane near the Stark factory. Although he recognized the 2 robots, Russell had no intention of getting involved. Tony Stark's friendship was indeed valuable, and Russell planned to befriend Tony in the future. But now was not the right time. On one hand, his current enhancements were only at the first stage. Although he could withstand bullets with his bare hands, physical constitution, his reaction speed far exceeded that of ordinary people, perception, and he possessed a mental shock that ignored physical defenses, mental. But he was still a ground dweller, lacking the ability to fly and with average mobility. Furthermore, large-caliber bullets and missiles were still extremely threatening to him. He was 90% confident that he could subdue the old man Obadiah with a mental shock under surprise. But what was the difference between 90% confidence and risking one's life? Without 98% certainty, there was no need to risk one's life for someone else's sake. On the other hand, he didn't want to be exposed to the public eye yet. The panel upgrade was still a few days away. Taking action would inevitably attract official attention. He had switched identities 3 months ago, and his current identity was fake and couldn't withstand scrutiny. He needed to be a good citizen and develop quietly. After the panel upgraded a few times, he would definitely shout out that classic line, "I don't eat beef." As for the butterfly effect causing Iron Man's defeat or mutual destruction, Russell wasn't worried about that. The butterfly effect had already occurred. In the corner of the screen, a figure wearing a black and white bodysuit and a hood was swinging towards the 2 sides engaged in battle. Ghost Spider, reporting for duty. Compared to Ironmonger, who was based on the Mark I, Ghost Spider was a seasoned superhero. Russell believed that with her help, Iron Man would easily defeat Ironmonger. He took out his phone. The time was 10:24 p.m. on October 24, 2010. It was still early, and considering Dr. Yao's advice, Russell decided to create a job posting and post it at the bookstore entrance. Interviews would begin the next morning, hiring several reading room administrators. Job responsibilities, negotiable. Qualifications, negotiable. Salary, negotiable. Working hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., with a 2-hour lunch break. Looking at his self-made job posting, Russell nodded in satisfaction. This was naturally not a formal job posting, and Russell wasn't looking for serious people. He was just looking for some amusement to pass the time while the panel was being upgraded. Chapter 3. Gwen, you've been hired. In the bookstore's rest area, Russell stood silently, gazing at the young woman before him. He never imagined that the first person to apply for a job would be the ghost spider he'd met the previous night. Russell, he broke the silence, extending his hand. Gwen Stacy. Gwen shook his hand, a hint of surprise on her face. Clearly, she hadn't expected the bookstore owner to be the man she'd met the night before. Retracting his hand, Russell smiled slightly, teasing Gwen. Gwen, may I call you that? Or should I call you Ghost Spider? Just call me Gwen normally, Mr. Russell, Gwen said shyly, feeling a little awkward about her other identity being revealed. You can call me Russell too, Mr. is too formal, Russell replied gently. Okay, Russell, Gwen's tone relaxed slightly. Gwen, can you tell me about last night? Did you find the girl who was kidnapped by the vampire? Russell asked Gwen about the vampire incident from the previous day. In the past 3 months, vampires had been appearing more and more frequently in New York, and he sensed something big was about to happen. If things weren't looking good, Russell planned to go out and lay low. Vampires don't drop attribute points. She was found, but she's already been transformed. Those damned vampires. Gwen's voice turned somber as she spoke of the girl's ordeal. What should we do? I took her home first and have her family look after her. She seems terrified, poor girl. Are there many cases like this lately? I mean, vampires transforming ordinary people, Russell continued to ask. I've encountered 3 or 4 this week, Gwen frowned. Clearly, she also sensed something was wrong. Are there many vampires in this world? Gwen asked, somewhat puzzled. She had arrived in this world by accident 2 weeks ago and didn't understand the deeper aspects of this world. In her original world, there was no such species as vampires. I don't know, but they certainly do. You mean, we could ask a few vampires? Gwen looked at Russell, somewhat eager. Faced with Gwen's expectant gaze, Russell declined. Not us, it's you, Ghost Spider. I'm just an ordinary person. Gwen rolled her eyes. Ordinary people can't kill a vampire with ultraviolet light without batting an eye. I just have a slightly better mental fortitude. Russell gestured with his fingers, making a defensive gesture. Let's not talk about vampires for now. Can you tell me about something else? Russell changed the subject, asking about the big event that happened last night. He didn't want Gwen to conscript him to investigate the vampires. Russell wanted to get Gwen to do the investigation for him. He'd share the information. Which event? The fight between the 2 robots last night. I saw you on TV. Compared to vampires, Russell was more interested in the aftermath of Iron Man and the Ironmonger. He wanted to know how far the original plot would go after Spider-Man's intrusion. Of course, it was with the help of the Ghost Spider that we finally defeated the evil Obadiah. Gwen's tone became lighter as she talked about her superhero exploits from the previous night. Fighting evil and helping others brought her joy and satisfaction. You mean, that tall, clumsy robot was Obadiah, the COO of Stark Industries? And the other gold and red robot was Tony Stark? Russell feigned ignorance, playing along. Even a gossip-monger should have some manners. Emotional value is essential. SHH. Don't tell anyone this. Gwen made a shushing gesture, lowering her voice to remind Russell. I know, Russell nodded. Before they knew it, Russell was sitting next to Gwen. Although there was no one else in the bookstore or lounge, the two unconsciously sat side by side, heads down, whispering. I heard Tony Stark is holding a press conference this afternoon. Shall we go check it out? Recalling a certain famous scene, Russell couldn't help but suggest. What's so interesting about that? Gwen, as one of the participants in last night's major event, already knew all sorts of inside information and wasn't interested in the press conference. Also, weren't we interviewing a reading room manager? Russell's tone changed abruptly, becoming serious. Gwen, you're hired. Ah, Gwen exclaimed, a little caught off guard by Russell's words. Russell, this job isn't complicated. I believe Gwen can handle it. As for the job duties, it mainly involves checking borrowers' identities, maintaining order in the reading room, and preventing book theft. How you do it is up to you, Gwen. Gwen was confused. How she does it? Russell reassured her, don't feel pressured. I'm just running this reading room to pass the time, profit or loss isn't important. As for the salary, I don't know the market rate, so let's start at $10,000 a month. If you have no objections, we can sign the contract now. With that, Russell went to print the contract. Wait a minute, Gwen called out to Russell. Although both were visitors from another world, unlike Russell, Gwen had lived in New York for 18 years in another world. A monthly salary of $10,000, an annual salary of $120,000. Her father, George Stacy, the New York City Police Commissioner, earns less than that. Isn't the salary too high? Also, can we not sign a contract? We can discuss the salary further, but why not sign a contract? Because, should she tell Russell that she wasn't from this world, but had traveled from a parallel universe and was now an undocumented immigrant? Such an absurd thing. Even Gwen herself wouldn't believe it if she hadn't experienced it firsthand. Seeing Gwen stammering and racking her brains for an excuse, Russell couldn't help but laugh. Haha. If you don't want a contract, then don't sign one. Let's talk about the salary then. Seeing that Russell didn't continue to press about the contract, Gwen breathed a sigh of relief. $5,000 a month, no, $3,000. This is the first time I've seen someone complain about the salary being too high, so I'll listen to you. Russell smiled, not arguing with Gwen about the salary issue. Russell, can I get an advance on 1 month's salary? Gwen's expression was slightly embarrassed. I'm out of money. And I need to rent a place. Only God knows how she's survived these past 3 weeks. When Gwen first arrived in this world, all she could think about was getting back, but reality quickly taught her a harsh lesson. Food, clothing, shelter, and transportation all cost money. Looking at the distressed Gwen, Russell fell silent. Are all superheroes this poor? Or is it just Spider-Man? Chapter 4: Tony and Pepper's Visit. Without a bottom line, Gwen could easily make money using her superhuman powers. But the Spider-Man identity held extraordinary significance for Gwen, and she didn't want to tarnish it. It would be a betrayal of her deceased friend, a disservice to her father's trust. In her universe, Spider-Man was a symbol of courage and justice. And in this universe, it should be the same. Of course, Gwen, Russell readily agreed, offering his suggestion. However, if you haven't found a place yet, why don't you move in with me? It's on the 7th floor of the bookstore. There are a few empty rooms. You can pick any one. Thank you so much, Russell. Gwen smiled brightly. Knock knock. Hello, may I come in? A gentle voice came with a soft knock. Click, come in. Before Russell could finish speaking, the door to the lounge opened. A man with sunglasses, a suit, and a mustache walked in. Behind him was a tall, blonde woman with a ponytail, and a portly man in a suit. Tony Stark. Tony entered, introducing himself as he sat down on the sofa. He clearly didn't have the habit of shaking hands. The sofa fabric is so, not breathable or comfortable to the touch, and the color. Tony, the woman called out to Tony Stark, signaling him to stop. Hello, I'm Pepper Potts, Tony's personal assistant. Pepper smiled confidently and introduced herself, extending her hand in a friendly gesture. The man in the suit walked behind Tony, standing behind him with a cool expression, remaining silent throughout. Russell, Gwen Stacy, they were looking for Gwen. The moment Russell saw Tony, he roughly understood what was going on. Most likely, Gwen hadn't noticed when she left last night and had been caught on camera. But why hadn't the SHIELD agents come? Had Tony had Jarvis intercept the data? Although somewhat puzzled, Russell didn't dwell on it. Entertaining his guests was the priority. Mr. Stark, Miss Potts, and this bodyguard, would you like a drink? Coffee or tea? Do you have any alcohol? Tony asked. Russell smiled slightly and shook his head. No, then thank you. Coffee, please. Pepper spoke up promptly. Russell smiled shyly. I'm sorry, we don't have any either. Tea, please. Pepper smiled helplessly. Okay, Miss Potts, please wait a moment. I'll go out and buy some tea. With that, Russell left the lounge, closed the door, and sat down at the bookstore counter. Buy tea? What kind of tea? Russell was just making an excuse to leave. Tony and his group were obviously there to see Gwen. He didn't want to linger in sight and then be asked to leave. As for what Tony and his group would talk about with Gwen, a door couldn't block his 100-point perception hearing. Is he always this humorous? As soon as Russell left, Tony couldn't help but complain, emphasizing the word humorous. I don't know him well, we just met. Gwen was amused by Russell's earlier behavior and quickly distanced herself. A cheerful atmosphere filled the air. Pepper was the first to recover, getting straight to the point. Miss Stacy, we're here because of last night. Thank you for saving Tony and me. Gwen waved casually, unconcerned. It's what Ghost Spider should do. Ghost Spider? Is that your nickname? I thought it was Pajama Baby Tony. Pepper stopped Tony's teasing again. Ghost Spider, as agile as a ghost? That suits you well, Gwen. Gwen smiled. The Ghost Spider symbolized more than that. But she didn't intend to explain. Even if you don't help, I have a way to deal with that big guy. As altitude increases, air pressure decreases, and the temperature drops accordingly. My Mark II has low temperature modifications, but that big guy doesn't. I just need to take him into the sky, and his armor will freeze. Tony, Pepper facepalmed. It seemed her boss's stubbornness was incurable. They had clearly come to thank him, but once they arrived. Gwen thought for a moment and nodded. That's true. Tony glanced at Pepper smugly, then looked at Gwen, slightly arrogant yet sincere. Anyway, you did us a huge favor last night. You can make a wish now, whatever the condition. Gwen looked at Tony earnestly. I didn't help you for anything in return, Gwen. Economists believe that doing good deeds promotes public welfare, and this behavior must be encouraged. Only by encouraging those who do good deeds can we improve social welfare, Pepper continued. I know you helped Tony out of kindness, justice, courage, and other admirable qualities, but not everyone possesses those qualities. If helping others brings no reward, then most people won't do good, but I don't have any wishes to fulfill right now. Gwen's only wish at this moment was to return to her universe. She didn't believe Tony could fulfill this wish for her, so there was no need to say anything and put Tony and Pepper in a difficult position. Then contact me or Pepper when you've thought it through, Tony decided directly. We also have a small gift for you, Gwen, Pepper added. With the business settled, Pepper and Gwen gradually began chatting about everyday matters. Knock knock. Miss Potts, your tea is here, please come in. Mr. Russell, green tea, less ice, 3 parts sugar, please enjoy. Russell, mimicking a waiter, brought Pepper the green tea he had just bought from the bubble tea shop next door. Thank you. Pepper's eye twitched. Although she knew Russell had deliberately left to give them space, this was still too perfunctory. After a few moments, Pepper said goodbye. Russell, we're leaving now, we won't bother you any longer, okay, goodbye, Pepper. X2 goodbye, Russell, goodbye, Gwen. Watching Tony and Pepper drive away, Russell turned to Gwen. Let's go, it's lunchtime, we need to eat too. Gwen looked at Russell in surprise. She thought he was going to ask her what she, Tony, and Pepper had been talking about. Aren't you going to ask what we talked about? Why ask when I can guess? I heard everything clearly outside. Why would I need to ask? Hasn't anyone told you that men shouldn't be so smart? Yes, who? You, sir. There's also a problem with Russell's information. Chapter 5 Hello, open the door and investigate. Sir, there's a problem with Russell's file too. What problem? Jarvis, his identity is fake, and the forgery is very crude. That's it. Tony was surprised. Many people use fake identities, smugglers, assassins, spies. But what does that have to do with him? Tony didn't think he and Russell would have any further interaction. Sir, the way he appeared is very similar to Miss Stacy's. Like he appeared out of nowhere, with no trace of his past, Jarvis explained. Don't all agents do that? Tony said dismissively. All right, Jarvis. Just keep a close eye on this man and Gwen, nothing more. He owed Gwen a favor from last night. Investigating Gwen was just a precaution. He wouldn't stop Gwen from knowing her identity or what she was doing, as long as it wasn't against Stark Industries. On the contrary, after discovering that Gwen was just doing vigilante work, he even helped her cover up her tracks. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, Russell, you've been to the street before. Gwen turned to Russell in the driver's seat, feigning surprise. Are you directionally challenged? I was checking to see if anyone was following us. Russell rolled his eyes and explained. With all the commotion near Stark Industries last night, who knows if anyone else will come looking for us? Gwen scratched her head, somewhat confused. I was careful to avoid cameras when I left last night. How did Mr. Stark find me? Russell pointed to the sky. Stark Industries has many private satellites. One of them might have captured you. Besides, Tony Stark has a highly optimized AI, Jarvis. Big data plus AI, comparing data, finding someone in New York is quite easy. Gwen frowned. She certainly understood how powerful the combination of big data and AI was, but was this world really that much more technologically advanced than her original world? It didn't seem so. Looking at the surrounding buildings and recalling the various electronic products she'd encountered over the past 3 weeks, she felt the technological levels of the two worlds were about the same. After driving around for so long, if someone was following us, they couldn't have fooled us. It seems only Tony Stark has discovered your true identity so far, which is good news. Russell stopped the car. We're here, Smith's Pizza. Let me tell you, don't let the old-fashioned decor fool you. The food is better than many fancy boutiques. Smith's Pizza, You know this place, Gwen? Yes, I know, Gwen nodded. A while ago, after I ran out of money, Mr. and Mrs. Smith took me in, and I even worked here for a while. Russell looked at Gwen, his tone wistful. What a coincidence. When I first came to New York, I was broke, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith took me in too. When did the world become so small? Thinking about how he'd attended several philanthropist funerals and only gained one attribute point, Russell felt relieved. It wasn't that the world was too small, but that there were too few good people. Hey, Gwen, a strong voice came from behind. Although the owner of the voice was old, the outline of muscles could be vaguely seen under his clothes, suggesting that he must have been a muscular man with 8-pack abs and a chiseled face in his youth. You're back. How did your interview go? Very well, Uncle Smith, Russell answered first, smiling. I was planning to bring Gwen here to celebrate. I didn't expect you two knew each other. Oh, it's Russell. Do you know Gwen too? Good afternoon, Grandpa Smith. Gwen greeted him first, then explained, Russell is my boss now. Gwen's boss is you? It's only been a few months, and you're already a bookstore owner? Not bad, Smith laughed heartily. Well, we definitely need to celebrate. Please have a seat, order whatever you like. It's on me today. Kobe pizza, no spice, and a Coca-Cola. Thank you, Uncle Smith. You? Smith shook his head and chuckled. This is the Big Apple, not the City of Angels. Kobe pizza is a type of Italian spicy sausage pizza. Kobe is the name of an NBA legend, and at this time, 2010, he was at the height of his fame after winning 2 consecutive championships. I'd like a fruit pizza, thank you, Grandpa Smith. Okay, just a moment. A moment later, Smith came out with 2 plates. Russell, your Kobe pizza. Gwen, your fruit pizza. Thanks, Uncle Smith. Grandpa, perhaps because Russell and Gwen arrived early, the shop wasn't very busy. Coincidences always pique curiosity. Smith, having stolen a moment of leisure, sat down and started gossiping about how Russell and Gwen met. Replacing the vampire with a thug, Russell roughly recounted how he met Gwen. Gwen, you were so careless, Smith said, his tone a mix of reproach and concern. Didn't I tell you? A few days ago, a friend of mine had his granddaughter kidnapped after going out alone at night. As he spoke, Smith's eyes reddened. Luckily, she's all right. She was brought back last night by a mysterious person. Gwen feigned shame, lowering her head and murmuring softly, I know I was wrong, Grandpa Smith. Russell glanced at Gwen and understood why she was fishing on the street last night. It turned out she was there to rescue Uncle Smith's granddaughter. As for a friend? What friend? A completely fabricated one. However, this only benefited that bastard vampire. He should have been torn to pieces instead of being killed directly by strong ultraviolet light. Next, Russell comforted the old man, promising to look after and protect Gwen. Yes, if there was any danger, he would definitely protect Gwen. Gwen, let's go visit that girl. You have a way? Gwen asked in surprise. Russell, I don't have a way, but I have a friend who should have a way. Hearing about her meant they knew each other, meeting her meant they were friends. Russell's friend was none other than the psychiatrist Yao, who was also the Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One. Although there was no evidence, he wasn't stupid, he knew the source of his illness. After a therapy session and a good night's sleep, all the negative states were swept away. This was something a psychiatrist couldn't do. In a certain neighborhood in Manhattan, Gwen quickly put on her hood and spider mask. Taking off her coat, she wore a spider bodysuit with black, white, and magenta as the main colors. Does this girl always wear bodysuits? Well, I'm not bad either. He pulled out his three-piece set for causing trouble, a Zorro hat, a V for Vendetta mask, and a cape. He rang the doorbell. Hello, open the door, please. Before he could finish speaking, Russell was shoved aside by Gwen. Hello, I'm Ghost Spider, the one who brought Miss Smith back last night. May I come in and check on Miss Smith? Chapter 6, Drink plenty of coconut water. Raw coconut water can replace blood plasma in emergencies. Tap tap tap, rapid footsteps sounded, and soon the door opened, revealing a middle-aged woman of about 40. Her skin, usually well-maintained, was now red and swollen, her face haggard, as if she hadn't slept all night. Mrs. Smith, middle-aged, was unusually agitated upon seeing Gwen and hurriedly ushered her inside. Eileen locked herself in her room last night and wouldn't come out no matter how much we called her. It's been over 10 hours, she hasn't eaten or drunk anything. Mrs. Smith began to sob softly. Miss Ghost Spider, do you have a way to help Eileen? Please. Gwen looked at Russell, and Mrs. Smith turned to look at Russell expectantly as well. Russell, didn't I say I couldn't help? Why are you looking at me? I do, madam, Russell said confidently. May I see Miss Smith? Russell's gentle voice came from behind the bizarre mask. Okay, come with me. Mrs. Smith walked to her daughter's bedroom and knocked on the door. Eileen, the doctor's here, open the door. A suppressed, painful roar came from inside. Don't come in, Eileen. Hearing her daughter's response, Mrs. Smith's eyes reddened, and tears streamed down her face. Mrs. Smith, don't worry, there'll be a way. Russell reassured Mrs. Smith first, then instructed Gwen, go to the trunk and get the coconuts I just bought. Coconut water contains a lot of potassium and small particles, similar in composition to blood plasma. In some emergency situations, it can replace blood plasma. Russell pointed to Eileen's bedroom door. Mrs. Smith, you don't mind if I break this door, do you? Yes. Russell turned off all the lights in the room, then observed the sunlight to make sure that no sunlight would come in when Eileen's door was opened. He changed into a cartoon mask. He miscalculated. The V for Vendetta mask would easily frighten children. Miss Smith, I'm coming in. He pushed off with his arm. Bang! A fist pierced through the wooden door, unlocking it from the inside. Don't come any closer. Don't come any closer. A girl of about 15 or 16 was huddled in a corner of the room, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and her clothes disheveled. Scratch marks were faintly visible on her exposed arms. Mrs. Smith stumbled forward and hugged her daughter, sobbing as she comforted her. It's all right, Eileen, it's all right. Russell, standing behind her, saw everything clearly. Eileen opened her mouth several times, revealing her fangs, but then held back. Her body trembled even more. Have a glass of coconut juice, it'll make you feel better. Squatting down in front of Eileen, Russell handed her a full glass of coconut juice. The girl hesitated for a moment when she saw Russell, then obediently took the glass. Soon, the glass was empty, and Russell handed her another. Another glass. Eileen's complexion visibly regained its color, and the scratch marks on her arms faded rapidly. Her instinctive craving for blood diminished, and her body stopped trembling. Exhaustion washed over her, and Eileen gradually fell asleep in Mrs. Smith's arms. Only then did Russell have a chance to survey the room, a scene of utter chaos. The once small dolls were torn apart, the beautiful clothes ripped, and the exquisite notebook shredded. Just like the life of a young girl. One page of the notebook lay at Russell's feet. It was covered in dense writing, persistence, Eileen, don't give up, and other such words. Russell seemed to see on it Eileen's face the night before, struggling alone against her vampiric urges. What a strong little girl. Mrs. Smith, Russell called softly, then instructed, when Eileen wakes up, make sure she drinks plenty of coconut water, it will help alleviate her symptoms. Remember, it has to be all natural. We'll leave now and go find a friend to ask for a cure. Okay, thank you so much. Mrs. Smith thanked her repeatedly, then asked worriedly, but, how can I contact you if something unexpected happens? Russell gave Mrs. Smith a number to write down. The two left Mrs. Smith's house and returned to the car. Gwen, who had been silent, said remorsefully, when I brought her back last night, she was just a little nervous. I didn't expect. It's not your fault, Gwen, Russell interrupted. You did very well. Nobody wants this to happen, except for that vampire who's already dead. Gwen responded in a low voice, still silent. Clearly, she was still blaming herself. Russell patted Gwen's arm in comfort and focused on driving. A moment later, Gwen came to her senses and realized the car wasn't heading towards the bookstore. Curious, she asked, "Russell, are you going to see your friend?" "Yes, aren't you going to call first to confirm where your friend is?" "What if she's not there if you just drive there?" "No need," Russell said, feigning mystery. "If she wants to see us, she will be there." He took out his phone, preparing to send a message. Focus on driving. Gwen snatched the phone. "Who do you want to call?" "I'll dial for you, psychiatrist Yano." "Send her a text to ask if she's in the consultation room." Gwen glanced at Russell in surprise, as if to say, "You want to see a psychiatrist?" Although they hadn't known each other for long, Gwen trusted her judgment. Russell was a fun-loving person, perfectly mentally healthy. Unable to free his hands, Russell could only roll his eyes. Many people have psychological problems, more or less. "Gwen, I suggest you go for some therapy when you have time." "How?" Gwen chuckled, not replying. Did Gwen have psychological problems? Yes. Ever since her friend Peter, who had taken her as a role model, researched lizard serum but died unexpectedly in her arms due to side effects after taking it, Gwen had been plunged into deep self-blame and grief. And Eileen's incident triggered her self-blame once again. Soon, the Ancient One replied, "Come over now, Yao's house, knock on the door." "Come in," pushed open the door and entered. The room was dimly lit, and an action movie, Constantine, was playing on the television. Several bags of snacks and iced drinks were laid out on the table. "Sit wherever you like, help yourself to something," a languid voice came from a figure nestled in the sofa. Sitting on the sofa beside him, Russell fell silent. "I didn't expect you to be like this, Ancient One. However, it's 3 o'clock, let's have some tea first." Russell didn't stand on ceremony, pouring himself and Gwen a drink and opening a bag of snacks, which they shared. Then, he leaned deeper into the sofa and watched the movie with the Ancient One. Gwen was puzzled, but followed Russell's example and watched the movie as well. For a moment, all three were silent. Only the light and shadow, the sound and color of the movie remained. The atmosphere in the room became warm and peaceful. Until the movie ended. "I already know about it, okay, but on one condition." Chapter 7 Vampire, Your Secret Has Been Exposed. 2010, Saturday afternoon. Russell once again walked out of the Ancient One's counseling room. 5 days had passed since his last visit to the Ancient One. 5 days ago, Russell agreed to the Ancient One's condition, to handle the current vampire incident. After the matter was resolved, the Ancient One would intervene to heal all the innocent infected. Russell clearly remembered the sly glint in the Ancient One's eyes when he agreed. It was the pleasure of getting something for nothing. It was just like how Russell would later assign the investigation task to Gwen. Back at the bookstore, looking at Gwen who was sitting listlessly at the counter, Russell casually asked, "Gwen, how's the intelligence gathering going?" "I found the vampire gathering place." When it came to business, Gwen perked up. "Many new faces appeared last night, and their numbers have been increasing these past 2 days. I estimate there are now tens of thousands. These past few days, every nightfall, Gwen would go out to track down the vampires, not returning until sunrise. Russell generously gave her a few days of paid leave. He's only 18, after all. He can still grow taller if he sleeps a little longer." "Russell, do you have any ideas?" Gwen asked. "If we can't wipe them out in one fell swoop, and they attack the citizens, it'll be a huge problem. As long as we're well prepared, it's not difficult to defeat them head-on by taking advantage of vampires' weakness to ultraviolet light." Russell frowned. "But wiping them out in one fell swoop is difficult for just the two of us. Once they split up and escape, we won't be able to stop them." "Let's call the police." "Gwen, call the police? Can the NYPD handle this kind of problem?" "Of course not. And there's a high probability that the NYPD has vampire moles. We need to leak the information to someone with enough power and gain their trust." Russell and Gwen exchanged a glance, simultaneously thinking of someone. "Let's go, Gwen, let's go find Tony Stark now, Stark Tower." Russell and Gwen met Tony as they wished. "Pajama baby, you're finally here. Have you thought about your wish?" It's not pleasant to owe someone a favor. Tony was dressed casually, holding a wine glass, muttering to himself. "And you, humorist, what brings you here?" Tony feigned surprise upon seeing Russell. "Wine, coffee, or tea? Don't worry, I have everything." Russell smiled at Tony's teasing but didn't respond. "I'll settle the score with you when you're poisoned by palladium." Gwen briefly explained the purpose of their visit to Tony. "Vampires? I always thought it was just an urban legend." "Jarvis, check it out." "Yes, sir." Tony sat on the sofa, took a sip of his drink, and said, "It's important, I need to verify it." "Wait a moment, Jarvis will be quick." Watching the data streams flash across the screen, Russell was impressed. Jarvis was indeed fast. A moment later, the data streams disappeared, replaced by several architectural perspectives and some textual information. "Sir, we've retrieved it from the SHIELD database." Jarvis's voice came from the speakers, explaining along with the images and text on the screen. "The earliest appearance of the vampire race is unknown. During World War II, the vampire race clashed with Germany. Due to their inherent racial flaws, they were massacred, with only 1 in 10 surviving. Several branches of the vampire race fled from Europe to the Americas. Seemingly reaching some kind of agreement with the authorities and receiving asylum, the screen switched, and a portrait was enlarged. One of these vampire branches now resides in New York, led by a man named Deacon Frost. He is preparing to implement a plan, the descent of the Blood God. Using 12 pure-blooded vampires and the Daywalker blade Eric Brooks, he will awaken the Blood God through a mysterious ritual. Afterward, the Blood God will re-embrace the other vampires, eliminating their racial flaws. Russell added, "Okay, a cliché story. But doesn't this sound like something from within the vampire world?" Tony asked, puzzled. "Mr. Stark, Frost's ambitions go far beyond this," Russell explained. "Frost is a radical among vampires. He believes in vampire supremacy, and humans are merely food. He's very dissatisfied with the current situation of vampires and intends to incite a war between vampires and humans." Mr. Stark, there are tens of thousands of vampires gathered in New York now. If a riot breaks out, the consequences will be unimaginable. Gwen also chimed in with her advice. "I've been investigating vampires these past few days and discovered they're connected to several missing persons cases." Tony frowned. "The situation is so serious, and the FBI and the NYPD haven't heard a thing? And what about SHIELD? They've got all the talk, but they don't walk the walk, sir," Jarvis said. "According to the intercepted information, SHIELD and the military already know about this. Then why haven't they taken action yet?" Gwen asked. "It's Saturday, the military is probably on holiday," Tony said casually. "Jarvis, connect me to Nick Fury." Tony sat on the sofa, waiting for the call to connect. Above the east coast of the United States, a massive stealth aircraft carrier hovered. "Fuck you, what are the military thinking? They actually said they'd give us the weekend off and postponed the operation." Inside the aircraft carrier, a middle-aged white man dressed as a one-eyed pirate was cursing loudly. "Have our agents keep a close eye on those vampires and secretly set up a blockade. Thanks for working overtime, brothers. Once this is resolved, your bonuses will double next month." Although annoyed by the unreliability of the U.S. military, Nick Fury still ordered his men to prepare. "Sir, Tony Stark requests a connection." "Why does Tony Stark want to contact me? Has he changed his mind and wants to join the Avengers?" "Connect him, Nick Fury. Do you know about the vampires?" Tony asked directly. "I know, but where did you find out?" "Where I found out isn't important," Tony questioned impatiently. "Since you know, why aren't you taking action?" Nick Fury was very annoyed by Tony's questioning. If it weren't for the military's interference, he would have wiped out those vampires by now. He composed himself, his face expressionless, and said, "SHIELD has already taken action. I haven't seen any action from you. It's classified." No comment. The conversation froze for a moment. "Mr. Stark, our goals are aligned." Coulson spoke up to ease the tension, his tone sincere. "Tony, please believe me, SHIELD has done its best. However, our resources are limited. I hope we can cooperate sincerely this time to protect New York's safety." "All right." After a moment of silence, Tony accepted Coulson's offer and agreed to cooperate. "We'll exchange intelligence. I hope you won't keep your no-comment statements. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Panel Upgrade, Great Battle Imminent. SHIELD learned from the Vampire Elder Council that Deacon Flowstaff violated the agreement by attacking the Vampire Elders and illegally holding a vampire gathering in New York, summoning vampires from all over the world. The Vampire Elder Council has requested the Federation's help to deal with these vampires. The number is still undetermined, but an initial estimate is around 5,000. Coulson gave a brief overview but didn't go into details. "Looks like my intelligence is more detailed," Tony bluntly stated, then elaborated on Deacon Flowstaff's plan. Moreover, Tony glanced at Gwen. "I've received information that this group of vampires numbers in the tens of thousands," Coulson exclaimed. If this figure was accurate, then SHIELD had made a huge mistake. Conventional weapons are generally ineffective against vampires. Specialized weapons are required. When specialized weapons are plentiful, the military faces a one-sided massacre of vampires. Once the weapons are exhausted, the roles will reverse. It's always good to be prepared. "Prepare supplies according to the new data first," Nick Fury said in a deep voice. "Also, have the council help put pressure on the military, telling them the situation has changed. Tomorrow, we need to send troops to wipe out these vampires. I'll also participate in tomorrow's battle," Tony suddenly said. "And Stark Industries will provide material assistance. Thank you, Mr. Stark. We really need your strength," Coulson said gratefully. See you tomorrow, Mr. Stark. "Russell and I will also participate in tomorrow's battle," Gwen said firmly. Tony looked at Gwen but didn't say anything. He had witnessed Gwen's fighting prowess. She could smash the ironmonger like a toy. Looking at Russell again, Tony hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure you can handle it, Russell? You can ask Gwen about that." Russell and Gwen had briefly sparred a few times when they were fooling around in the bookstore. He knew her strengths and weaknesses. "You two can stay here tonight. Have Pepper prepare 2 rooms for you, and we'll meet up with the SHIELD people together tomorrow morning." With that, Tony walked towards the studio. He was going to work through the night to modify an anti-vampire armor. Silver ammunition, ultraviolet bombs, and a mixture of silver and garlic gas. A delicate fragrance filled the bedroom, making one feel relaxed. But Russell was wide awake. He was staring intently at the deep blue panel in front of him. Name, Russell, Transcendent, Lifespan, 25/7850, Constitution II. 5, Perception II. 5, Spirit II. 5, Talent 1, Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points. Default is Lifespan. Talent 2, Attribute Transfer, Lifespan, can be converted into Constitution, Perception, and Spirit. Description, none. Just now, the system upgrade was completed. Russell noticed it immediately. The changes in his body were too great, too drastic. He clearly remembered that the 3-dimensional values first became 1, and then gradually increased to 5. During this process, Lifespan, Constitution, Perception, and Spirit also increased simultaneously. Lifespan increased by 7,600 years. He clenched his fist, feeling the power in his body at this moment. His arm strength was estimated to reach 5 tons, 5 times that before the upgrade. In other words, 1. Constitution, attribute point after the upgrade was equivalent to 100 points before. Life-saving. The transfer of lifespan points to Constitution changed from a 1:1 ratio before the upgrade to a 100:1 ratio. Very reasonable. Next, Russell tested it again, and Perception and Spirit also follow this pattern. Deep blue, life-saving, name, Russell, Transcendent, Lifespan. 25/150, Constitution. 31, Perception. 31, Spirit. 30, Russell saved 7,400 years of lifespan in one go. The reason he didn't save the remaining 150 years was because he hadn't tested it yet, and he was worried that after advancing to Transcendent, he would lose 100 lifespan points for every year he lived. He chose to distribute the points evenly. The reason was simple, intuition. The surging power within him brought a sense of fulfillment. His arm's strength of 31 tons, although not yet tested, was enough to withstand the impact of conventional weapons at a speed of no less than 100 meters per second. And an invisible, intangible energy that can both defend and attack. It can greatly enhance physical defense and attack. The improvement in perception is like opening a sixth sense. It reduces reliance on the five senses and allows one to see everything around them with their heart. In battle, one can anticipate the enemy's moves. The improvement in spirit allows Russell to truly feel the power of the soul. His original mental impact ability has been greatly enhanced. He can attack in groups to eliminate weaker enemies, or attack a single target to intimidate the opponent. He can even entangle in an attack, simultaneously striking the mind and body. Russell feels that he is now terrifyingly strong, with combat power far exceeding his paper strength. Looking at the value on the panel, which is not yet 100, a sense of urgency arises. What will the next stage of the panel be like? Will it still be 100-fold increase, or even more? Eternal Night Palace. Deacon Flowerster's ascension ceremony is underway. As the blood of the Blade Warriors flows through the pipes into the sacrificial ceremony, the dark clouds in the sky quickly obscure the full moon. Blood drips down, landing on the foreheads of the 12 pure-blooded vampires who are under control. We are the masters of this world. The blood god is about to descend. Deacon Flowerstaff stepped onto the center of the altar, ripped open his clothes to reveal his chest, and arrogantly spread his arms, looking up. The blood of the Daywalkers traced mysterious runes, converging at one point and dripping onto Deacon Flowerstaff's forehead, accompanied by a thunderous roar. Then, bolts of lightning ripped through the night sky, striking the Hall of Eternal Night. The 12 pillars of the Hall of Eternal Night lit up in succession, the lightning flowing down the pillars, first striking the foreheads of the 12 pure-blooded vampires on the altar, then converging on Deacon Flowerstaff. Moments later, the bodies of the 12 pure-blooded vampires exploded, their souls transforming into skeletal bats that flew towards Deacon Flowerstaff in the center. The 12 skeletal bats passed through Deacon Flowerstaff's body, infusing him with the essence of pure-blooded vampires. His bloodline was being elevated, his physical attributes were increasing, and his healing abilities underwent a qualitative change. The original racial flaws of vampires were also erased one by one. Through Deacon Flowerster's body, a gaze from beyond the universe descended. With just one glance, the owner of that gaze went mad. The Eternal Heart. This planet was actually formed from the Eternal Heart. Boom. Thunder flashed once more. The blood god disregarded everything, pouring his power into this universe. Even though the consumption was unusual, with only 1/10 reaching its destination, he didn't care. He didn't need much, as long as he could steal a sliver of eternal power, his authority would be greatly enhanced. My apostle, go and conquer this planet for me. The blood god's power poured down, and this time, all the vampires in the hall were bathed in divine grace. Chapter 9 Gathering. Sir, an unusual magnetic field fluctuation has been detected outside New York, and nearby satellite signals are being severely interfered with. The words New York and unusual magnetic field fluctuation together sent a chill down Nick Fury's spine. The energy level outside New York is surging rapidly. Connect with New York Field Commander Agent Hill and Tony Stark. Nick Fury reacted swiftly. Also, send our space carrier over there, sir. SHIELD requests a connection, saying a major incident has occurred. Connected. Tony, who was adjusting his armor, stopped what he was doing and walked towards the living room. Jarvis, wake Gwen and Russell to the living room, sir. Gwen and Russell have already gone to the living room. At this moment, Russell and Gwen stood side by the window, looking towards the direction of the Hall of Eternal Night. There, dark clouds obscured the moon, and continuous thunderclaps illuminated the night sky. Such powerful energy fluctuations, such a dangerous aura. The hairs on Gwen's arms stood on end. Whenever she had the urge to go and investigate, her spider sense would throb wildly. Russell frowned. The scenes in the movie weren't this exaggerated, were they? The enhanced Deacon Flowerster only had stronger healing abilities. In a direct fight, he wasn't even as good as Blade. How come my combat power is so many times greater? From Russell's perspective, endless energy flowed into the Palace of Eternal Night through a passage. Despite the huge energy consumption along the way, a massive amount of energy was also spilled out, as if it were free, enveloping the Palace of Eternal Night. And a strange, bloody figure approached continuously along the passage, seemingly about to traverse endless time and space and descend into the mortal world. Taking out his phone, Russell prepared to call the Ancient One Trask. This matter was too complicated. He and Gwen, being small and frail, couldn't handle it. Before the call connected, a text message arrived, roughly saying, "Go ahead and do it with confidence. Everything is under control. I'll cover for you if anything goes wrong." What's going on? Tony walked to the two of them, staring blankly at the scene before him. Behind Tony was a screen that Jarvis had manipulated and moved there. The screen connected Nick Fury and Maria Hill. The Blood God has descended. Just now, at the vampire gathering place, Russell and Maria Hill's voices rang out one after the other. Through some special ritual, they communicated with an interdimensional demon god, exchanging power for sacrifice. Russell turned and explained to the group. And this is Kamar Taj. Russell, when traveling, one's identity is self-imposed. What's wrong with working for the Sorcerer Supreme and using Kamar Taj's banner? Director of SHIELD, Nick Fury, Commander of SHIELD, Maria Hill, Iron Man, Tony Stark, Ghost Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy. The group quickly introduced themselves. Sorcerer Russell, what should we do now? Nick Fury went straight to the point. He had long heard of Kamar Taj and knew that the sorcerers there were skilled at dealing with supernatural evil forces. He wanted to hear the opinion of a professional first. Charge in and wipe out all the vampires there. As for the Blood God, the Sorcerer Supreme will handle that. We don't have enough manpower. The military is on holiday today, and it'll be difficult to mobilize them quickly. We only have a few hundred SHIELD agents setting up defenses. Fuck, Tony raged. Is this what you call taking measures? What about the NYPD? Gwen asked. The NYPD has tens of thousands of officers. Why don't we ask them for help? Deacon Frost has been operating in New York for decades. He has informants all over the city. Mobilizing local forces would risk leaks, Nick Fury explained. More importantly, he didn't mention the NYPD's responsibilities. One of these is protecting civilians from supernatural events or advanced technology, while also filtering out information that shouldn't be known to the public. Involving the NYPD in the vampire hunt would easily expose the vampire's existence to the public, causing panic. Let's get moving, Russell urged. The blockade is complete, Agent Hill reported. We can now detect any vampire leaving, but we don't have enough manpower to guarantee an interception. The SHIELD space carrier is activated and is expected to arrive over New York in 10 minutes, Nick Fury commanded. The carrier will then use specialized weapons to attack the vampire encampment. Hill will intercept any fleeing vampires, and Tony, the three of you will support Hill. Okay, the call ended, and everyone sprang into action. Tony tossed two walkie-talkies to Russell and Gwen. The channel is set up. Test it. If everything's okay, we'll head out now and meet up with Agent Hill. No problem, X2. Okay, do you need me to arrange a helicopter to take you there? No, we'll go ourselves. Russell declined Tony's offer. He needed to get used to his current strength and speed during the journey to prepare for the upcoming battle. Without further ado, Tony, with Jarvis's help, donned his armor, opened the window, and soared into the sky. Gwen shot out a web that clung to Tony. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared into the night sky. Russell sprinted, leaping forcefully into the night. He unleashed his mental power, coordinating it with his full sensory abilities, and the terrain within a few kilometers flashed into his mind. Quickly pinpointing a landing spot, he jumped again. If it weren't for the buildings beneath his feet, Russell felt he could cover hundreds of meters with each jump. Could he use the air for leverage? Thinking this, Russell immediately tried it. Crack, a sudden, brief crackling sound rang out as Russell stepped into the air. With his current strength, he could indeed use the air for leverage. But the speed was still slower than running and jumping on the ground. Abandoning air travel, Russell dutifully leaped and traversed rooftops, heading towards the Hall of Eternal Night. Not being able to fly was hardly cool. However, for traveling, there seemed to be a more sophisticated method. A thought struck him, and Russell considered using the Kamar Taj magical portal. I just told Nick Fury I'm from Kamar Taj, and the Ancient One didn't object. Does that mean she tacitly approves of me being a member of Kamar Taj? As a member of Kamar Taj, how could I not know how to use portals? It's decided then and there. After dealing with the vampire incident, I'll consult the Ancient One. Meanwhile, Blade is locked in a fierce battle. Just moments ago, with the help of his companions, he successfully escaped and charged straight to the center of the Temple of Eternal Night altar. He'd been cutting through everything along the way, assuming the altar would be the same. But things haven't gone as planned. Perhaps I should escape first? Chapter 10 Vampires. When SHIELD space carrier arrived at the Temple of Eternal Night, the vampire extermination campaign officially began. The space carrier sailed directly above the Temple of Eternal Night, its deck equipped with dozens of powerful ultraviolet, UV, Lamps. The UV radiation poured down, enveloping the Temple of Eternal Night and surrounding buildings. Outside the Temple of Eternal Night, the vampires were caught completely off guard by this sudden attack. Thousands of vampires turned to ashes under the UV lights. Only a few quick-reacting mixed-blood vampires and pure-blooded vampires with high UV resistance managed to escape by taking refuge in nearby buildings. Drones started up, continuously spraying concentrated garlic extract liquid downwards. The garlic extract liquid quickly atomized upon landing, seeping into the buildings. The agonizing screams of vampires echoed from within the buildings. The pain of their internal organs being corroded was unbearable for most. The garlic extract gas wasn't enough to kill the vampires, but it could temporarily incapacitate them. Some vampires wearing protective suits and garlic-proof masks tried to escape, but were killed by SHIELD agents using silver bullets. A very few, whether due to superior strength or sheer luck, managed to break through the hail of bullets, but they would face their final judgment, an arrow. It was the man with a 100% win rate in team fights. Hawkeye, Clinton Francis Barton. Russell noticed that while Clinton was picking off elite vampires, he also took the time to fire specially made arrows from various tricky angles into the buildings where the vampires were hiding. No wonder he's an ADC, his output is fierce. But then, doesn't that make me just a bystander? How can these vampires be so weak? Knowing their racial weaknesses, unable to fight head-on, can't they dig tunnels and fight guerrilla warfare? Tony, Gwen, Russell, Hill's voice came through the walkie-talkie. You guys are highly mobile, provide immediate support should any vampires emerge from the tunnels. I've sent the terrain scan map to Jarvis, all exits are marked, Roger, X3. Finally, something to do. Whack-a-mole, what an easy and enjoyable task. Russell's powerful senses allowed him to clearly hear the vampires' footsteps in the tunnels. 1, 2, 3. For a moment, outside the Temple of Eternal Night, SHIELD's situation looked much better. But Russell knew things weren't so simple. The power of the Blood God was still being channeled into the Temple of Eternal Night. Just then, a handsome figure burst out of the Temple of Eternal Night, sprinting towards the blockade. He was unharmed, bathed in ultraviolet light and breathing in the garlic-scented air. Even the specially made silver bullets were useless against him. Clinton drew his bow, but upon seeing who it was, he lowered his hand. This handsome young man was none other than Blade, who had escaped from the center of the Temple of Eternal Night's altar. I have important intelligence. With those words, Blade attracted everyone's attention. Inside the Palace of Eternal Night, the Blood God's descent ritual continues. Hundreds of vampires have already transformed into bloodlines, and thousands more are in the process of doing so. Bloodlines are stronger, faster, and more physically robust than vampires. They are also immune to silver, garlic essence, and ultraviolet light. They possess superhuman regeneration abilities. Injured limbs decompose into blood and then rapidly regenerate. Their only weaknesses into coagulants are the vampires outside just expendable pawns, used to distract us. Hill frowned. As the commander, she quickly realized Deacon Flowerster's strategy. Director Fury, I request fire support to destroy the Palace of Eternal Night. And to transport a batch of anticoagulants. Despite their efforts to control the scale of the battle, as the fighting began, over a dozen media outlets rushed to the scene by helicopter or car, only to be intercepted. A large-scale military operation taking place in the suburbs of New York, even involving high-explosive missiles. Nick Fury could already imagine how the New York media would report on it tomorrow. This decision was not easy. Approved, ignoring the potential repercussions, Nick Fury agreed to Hill's decision. A barrage of artillery fire would level the Temple of Eternal Night, and incidentally, probe the vampires' true strength. The New York media's reaction could wait. If the vampires were truly as Blade had said, perhaps New York wouldn't exist after tonight. A missile was launched from the space carrier, its target the Temple of Eternal Night. A Jericho missile. Tony recognized it as a Jericho missile manufactured by Stark Industries. Take cover, boom boom boom, a shockwave swept across the surroundings, followed by billowing dust. As the dust settled, the ruins of the Temple of Eternal Night appeared before everyone's eyes. Deprived of the temple's protection, exposed to ultraviolet searchlights, thousands of unconverted vampires howled, slowly turning to ash. The Jericho missile's power lived up to expectations. But another scene was even more chilling. Nearly 1,000 vampires, had survived. Many of them had lost limbs in the explosion, Some even reduced to half their bodies. Without exception, they were all rapidly recovering. A clump of blood foam coalesced, and severed limbs reappeared in just a few seconds, completely restored. Good news, at least we haven't seen anyone recover from being blown to bits, Tony told a lame joke, which everyone found rather dry, except for Russell. It is indeed good news. Energy absorption can absorb energy from blood foam. Although the distance is too great and the absorption rate is low, there are many people involved. The hundreds of injured vampires just now provided a total of more than 400 attribute points. Can I directly absorb the energy of the blood god? I'll try it later. See that? This is the vampire race. This is the power bestowed upon us by our gods. Human weapons are completely ineffective against us. Deacon Flowerstaff stepped forward, pointed to New York behind the SHIELD team, and swung down heavily. Now, kill them all, drink their blood, then, hand over New York to my gods, charge. Nearly 1,000 vampires charged towards the SHIELD blockade like ghosts, bullets leaving only fleeting holes in their bodies. Carrier fire cover, ground personnel board vehicles and evacuate. Seeing that prepared weapons were ineffective against the vampires, Hill quickly gave the order for a cover retreat. Hill did not intend to use the lives of SHIELD agents to temporarily delay the vampires' advance. The immediate priority was the anticoagulant and finding other weaknesses in the vampires. While the SHIELD team evacuated, Russell, Gwen, and Tony went against the flow. Gwen used spider silk to trip the vampires' legs, hindering their pursuit, but found that they could not break free immediately. Gwen immediately shared this information on the combat channel. Russell, Mr. Stark, let's weave a big net to deal with them. Hey, Russell, where are you? Why did you rush in? Chapter 11 The advantage lies with me. Deacon Flowster scoffed at Russell, who had stormed into the vampire ranks. Did he think he was Blade? Even Blade would have to flee in terror if faced with a horde of vampires. If the vampires hadn't been receiving divine blessings in the main hall and refusing to give chase, Blade might not have escaped either. Deacon Flowster was in high spirits. 1,000 nearly immortal vampires, the advantage was mine. Bang! Russell punched a vampire in front of him with all his might, unleashing a force of 31 tons. In the blink of an eye, a cloud of blood mist exploded. The surrounding vampires were slightly startled, then charged forward fearlessly again. This guy was even stronger than Blade, but it didn't matter. The vampire's immortality was my advantage. Russell glanced at his attribute panel, a smile creeping onto his face. Lifespan points plus 30. The vampire warriors surging towards him like a tide suddenly seemed adorable to Russell. Moving lifespan points, here I come. Bang! 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 Wherever Russell passed, bursts of blood mist exploded. Compared to vampires, the newly born vampires had all their attributes greatly enhanced. But compared to Russell, they were too slow and too fragile. As for strength, he hadn't been hit, so he didn't know. In 1 minute, Russell had destroyed 76 vampires, 76 bursts of blood mist exploding one after another. Like a rain of blood, the surrounding land was stained red with blood, and the air was filled with a stench of blood. There were no vampires left around Russell. Only then did Deacon Flowerstaff react. Why hadn't the destroyed vampires regenerated? How had the vampires' immortality been broken? A trace of fear flashed across Deacon Flowerstaff's face. But he knew that now was the time for him, the vampire leader, to fight to the death. Not only Deacon Flowerstaff, but Nick Fury, who was on the space carrier closely monitoring the battle and had noticed this scene, was also somewhat surprised. The intelligence indicated that the Kamartaj sorcerer's fighting style wasn't like this. Lifespan points plus 2,288. Russell couldn't help but grin. This grin made Deacon Flowerstaff, who was rushing towards them and ready to fight to the death, panic. Deep blue, life-saving. Without paying much attention to the panel, Russell accelerated and chased after the vampires in other directions. As for Deacon Flowerstaff, who was rushing towards him, Russell had of course noticed him. However, he was worried that if he defeated Deacon Flowerstaff, it would terrify the other vampires. If they scattered and ran, Russell would have a hard time chasing them. Although there was a difference of dozens of times in strength, the speed difference was only 2 or 3 times. Russell couldn't fly, and on the ground, due to air resistance and other factors, it was difficult to increase speed as he went higher. Seeing Deacon Flowerstaff catching up, Russell turned around and threw a punch to meet it. The moment of contact, he activated his senses at full power, feeling Deacon Flowerstaff's strength. Then he reduced his strength by half, pretending to be defeated, and fled towards the direction of the vampires ahead. He's rigging the fight. He's rigging the fight. Nick Fury on the space carrier didn't see it, but the instruments detected it. His strength against other vampires was about 30 tons, while the force he just exerted was only about 20 tons. Deacon Flowerstaff didn't have any instruments to help him measure it. His strength was slightly less than mine, and his speed was also inferior. The advantage was mine. Stop him, Deacon Flowerstaff roared, signaling his men to stop Russell. Don't come any closer, I'm just teasing him, Russell whispered in the voice channel, lest others, worried about him, come and ruin his fun. The two chased each other at speeds exceeding 100 meters per second. Every time Deacon Flowerstaff caught up, Russell would exchange a few blows with him, then use the momentum to shake him off, only to wait for him to catch up again. It was a chase, a flight. It was just tough on the other vampires along the way. Russell, like this, slowly apply pressure, it wasn't coming through the earpiece. It was the Ancient One. Deacon Flowerstaff's speed and strength began to slowly increase. Had the blood god rewarded him with energy again? Russell wondered, simultaneously increasing his speed and strength. Meanwhile, his talent one, energy absorption, attempted to absorb a trace of the blood god's energy. This energy was actively provided by the blood god, making absorption effortless. However, he suffered from indigestion. Just like absorbing energy during panel upgrades, he couldn't purify the energy attributes and was affected. It was a pity, he could only absorb second-hand energy. He didn't know how much he would lose in this process. The chase between the two continued, and gradually, Deacon Flowerstaff realized something was wrong. My strength has doubled since then, so how come his, Russell's, strength is still only slightly weaker than mine? Moreover, without realizing it, more than 200 of his people had disappeared. In total, more than 300 of his people had been killed by him. More importantly, he felt his body was already saturated. Even if the blood god provided more energy, he couldn't effectively absorb it to improve his physique. Useless, the blood god cursed inwardly. At the beginning of his descent, he had searched the apostles' memories and obtained a lot of information. Deacon Flowerstaff was outstanding in strategy and management. He was ambitious, resourceful, and a useful pawn. Although his aptitude was average, this world's extraordinary abilities were barely noticeable, according to his memories, which was sufficient. If all else failed, he could upgrade his other vampire subordinates. It would be more troublesome and costly. However, he hadn't expected to encounter such a formidable opponent so soon after the ritual. His apostle had foolishly offered himself up. Run. You're no match for him, the blood god's voice echoed in Deacon Flowerstaff's mind. Regardless, he had to protect this apostle. If the apostle died, losing the world's coordinates and the initial investment would be a minor matter. Losing eternal authority was a major one. Cover me. Taking advantage of Russell's act and the opportunity to escape, Deacon Flowerstaff fled in the opposite direction. He wasn't lacking in the will to fight to the death, but the person before him couldn't be defeated by mere fighting. Moreover, he couldn't defy the blood god's will. Chase after him, attack him, but don't kill him, the Ancient One's voice echoed in Russell's ears again, tinged with excitement. Something was amiss. Russell suspected that the current situation was orchestrated by the Ancient One. He would settle accounts with her later. Russell chased after Deacon Flower. At this moment, his three-dimensional attributes had reached 66. A very auspicious number. The roles were reversed. You run, I chase. He caught up with the big hammer at 80 and the little hammer at 50. Russell suddenly realized that hitting Deacon Flower could directly increase his lifespan points. If only he hadn't pretended, he would have just punched him directly. Damn it. Deacon Flower was beaten very humiliatingly. The blood god was also very humiliated. Deacon Flower was beaten and injured particularly badly, but fortunately he repaired him in time with energy. His energy transfer was only 1/10 efficient, while the injury caused by Russell's ordinary punch required 250 units of his energy to repair. In total, Russell's punch cost him 2,500 units of energy. Although his resources were vast, he could withstand this consumption, but it was still frustrating. But it didn't matter, one of his main combat avatars was rushing towards this universe. If we drag this out, the advantage is in my hands. Chapter 12 The Blood God Descends. Sure enough, he was rigging the match all along, Nick Fury thought to himself as he watched Russell relentlessly beating Deacon Flowerstaff on screen. But what was his purpose in doing this? Is the second line of defense complete, sir? It's complete, Callison replied, then added, according to Gwen Stacy's intelligence, this defense line mainly consists of intercepting ropes and capture nets. Furthermore, it's been tested that after injecting a large amount of anticoagulant, these vampires will self-destruct. Good, Nick Fury nodded, then pointed to the map and said, judging from their movement patterns, Deacon Flowster has been trying to rejoin the main vampire force. He must have some scheme. We can't let him succeed. Tony, Gwen, you two go support Russell and intercept Deacon Flowster. Leave the defense line to Hill. Nick Fury switched channels. Is there a problem with Russell's side? Gwen asked worriedly. That funny kid went too far? He just told us not to go over there. Despite saying that, Tony immediately piloted his armor and flew towards Russell's location. Soon, Tony realized he was wrong. Sledgehammer 80. Russell caught up with Deacon Flowster again and delivered a heavy punch to his back. Deacon Flowster flew forward like a kite with a broken string, but in doing so, he increased the distance between himself and Russell. He had already made his move. Turning back to fight would only result in more hits, so it was better to take the hit head-on. However, this time the situation was different. A red gold robot blocked his path. Bang bang bang, Tony raised his hand, firing several small missiles at Deacon Flowster, then, under the cover of the missiles, rushed forward and kicked out. Time to play football, Tony muttered to himself, intending to use this vampire leader as a football and kick him back. The idea was beautiful, but reality was cruel. Get out of my way. Deacon Flower adjusted his stance, taking Tony's kick head-on, his movements only slightly pausing. Then, he grabbed Tony's foot before it could retract and flung it towards Russell behind him. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, several wisps of spider silk landed on Deacon Flower's joints. Gwen had arrived just in time, blocking Deacon Flower's path. Russell dodged them, not going to catch Tony. Tony could adjust his stance in mid-air to absorb the force. Taking the hit head-on would easily cause secondary injury. It wasn't about prioritizing Gwen's support. After being enhanced multiple times by the Blood God, Deacon Flower's physical abilities were superior to Gwen's in every aspect. In just a few rounds, Gwen could only barely defend herself with the help of her spider sense. But Deacon Flower was also blocked by Gwen and couldn't escape. Russell arrived. This time, he'd give him a hard time. An invisible force within him concentrated in his right arm, wrapping around his fist. Crack, boom, with a sonic boom, Russell's fist landed on Deacon Flower's back. Invisible energy seeped in, destroying him from within. This time, there was no time to adjust his posture. Deacon Flower was slammed to the ground by Russell. Bang, bang, the first sound was the explosion of Deacon Flower's chest. The second sound was the impact of Deacon Flower hitting the ground. Whoosh, Tony piloted his armor back to the battlefield. At this moment, Russell, Gwen, and Tony surrounded Deacon Flower from three directions, front and rear. You have nowhere to escape. Surrender, Russell said righteously. This wasn't Russell's true feeling, but the atmosphere was right. You think you've already won, Deacon Flower said grimly. Where the Blood God passes, all things become vampires. Watch out. Feeling her spider sense throbbing wildly, Gwen quickly warned her, while retreating. Bang, Russell advanced instead of retreating, kicking Deacon Flowstuff and sending him flying. Boom, endless crimson energy erupted from Deacon Flowstuff's body, unconsciously spreading outwards. What is this? Tony asked in fear. He didn't have Russell's or Gwen's reaction speed. If Russell hadn't kicked Deacon Flowstuff away in time, he would have been exposed to this crimson energy. Pure Blood God power, Russell explained. It can transform other life forms into vampires. Then just now, yes, your guess was correct. Tony's face turned ashen. He didn't want to become that inhuman, ghostly thing. My power is not limited to this, Deacon Flowstuff. No, the Blood God said. I can also continuously strengthen vampires until their limit. At some point, the other vampires abandon their attack on the defensive line and return to join the Blood God. As if confirming the Blood God's words, the vampire aura around the Blood God continued to strengthen. This body's aptitude is average, even at its limit, it's no match for you. But what about 700 vampires at their limit? Extraordinary beings, the Blood God's tone was devoid of emotion, as if stating a simple truth, retreat. Once I've achieved my goal, I will leave. At that time, I will no longer interfere in the affairs of your universe. Otherwise, I will strengthen these 700 vampires to their limit, kill you, and then go to complete my task. Russell and the other two fell silent. On the space carrier, Nick Fury, who had been watching, also fell silent. Strengthening 700 vampires to their limit across endless dimensions of space and time? Who are you kidding? If it were in the Blood God's own dimension, Russell believed he could do it. But here, Russell carefully sensed the flow of the Blood God's energy. 700 vampires absorbed approximately 9,000 units of energy per second. No, it was the Blood God who transferred approximately 9,000 units of energy per second. Since the vampires gathered around the Blood God, his energy had stopped expanding outwards. Moreover, he seemed unable to effectively control this energy. Let's test it out. Also, let's see how much I can gain after the vampire absorbs this energy and I destroy it. Action speaks louder than words. Russell quickly rushed into the Blood God's energy domain, destroyed a vampire, and then quickly rushed out to plus 184. Russell quickly calculated in his mind. The coefficient is approximately 0.2. For every unit of Blood God energy a vampire absorbs, it provides me with 0.2 units of energy. It's a pity that directly absorbing Blood God energy has too many side effects. Let's put on an act, buy some more time, that's still a significant amount of energy. Let's put on an act, buy some more time. The Ancient One's voice rang in Russell's ears again, her excitement and joy barely concealed. Russell, can you get close to the Blood God and kill the other vampires? Nick Fury asked. Russell frowned, not immediately answering Nick Fury. He was pondering a question, how to maximize the benefits? Chapter 13 Unleash Your Energy, Blood God. The total energy transmitted by the Blood God is calculated by multiplying the energy transmission power by the time, not the absorption limit of the 700 vampires. The best way to maximize the benefit isn't to wait for the Blood God to fully strengthen these 700 vampires and then harvest them all at once. Instead, it's to attack Deacon Forrester, putting enough pressure on him to force him to use as much of the energy transmitted by the Blood God as possible for healing, thus slowing down the strengthening of the other 700 vampires. I need to find a way to get Tony and the others to cooperate with me. Having sorted out his thoughts, Russell slowly spoke. I have a way to block the corruption of the Blood God's power, but I can't fight for long. To catch the thief, catch the king first. Russell looked firmly at the Blood God. The Blood God's power needs to be transmitted through Deacon Forrester. I will try my best to kill him. You cover me, okay? We'll clear the way for you. Fire. A dozen small missiles were fired at the vampires. The gathered vampires had become sitting ducks. The Blood God's eyes burned with rage. He hadn't expected Russell to be so unreasonable. Hadn't he heard of demanding the highest price and then settling for less? He attacked without even negotiating. These local superhumans are so rude. Half of you spread out, half cover me, and we'll retreat to the city. The Blood God coldly gave the order. Normally, vampires can easily heal themselves from regular injuries, consuming very little energy. But something's strange here. Once injured, their energy dissipates, and they mysteriously disappear. Stop them. Don't let them into the city, Nick Fury urged. Tony piloted his armor into the air, firing at the scattered vampires. Damn, they heal too fast. Gwen continuously fired webs and engaged in close combat, binding and entangled vampires one by one. There are too many of them. Blade also stopped several vampires. Even with similar physical abilities, Blade easily suppressed them, gaining the upper hand, but unable to inflict effective damage. Their weakness is anticoagulants. Ordinary attacks are ineffective against them. Haven't the anticoagulants been transported yet? Blade reminded them again. They're already being mobilized, but it'll take a while. Caught off guard, the unprepared group was helpless against the vampires. It seemed they had to resort to that ultimate move, the strongest crowd-clearing skill in the One Piece world. Gwen, step back. Russell rushed into the fray, grabbed Gwen's wrist, and deftly flung her away. Whoosh, Russell focused, unleashing his full mental power. His previously invisible and colorless mental energy swept through like a whirlwind. Wherever it passed, figures froze. The battle seemed to have been paused. Thud, 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 one vampire after another fell. Their eyes rolled back, and they lost consciousness instantly. The power of the Blood God seemed to be impacted, trembling violently. Finally, all the vampires scattered outside the Blood God's influence were wiped out. What is this? Blade planted his sword in the ground, struggling to support himself as he asked. As a warrior who had fought countless battles and slain numerous vampires and their lackeys, his unwavering will was beyond question. But it was precisely because of his unwavering will that he withstood the entire mental assault from Russell, and could feel the terror of that power even more acutely. Even someone as resilient as him felt a flicker of fear in that instant. Gwen looked at Russell, her expression uncertain and surprised. Although she wasn't within the attack range, her spider sense was pounding wildly for a moment. Russell ignored Blade. After unleashing his full mental power in the attack, his spirit and energy were fully mobilized. Now, he only wanted a good fight. Bang! With a burst of speed, Russell shot towards the blood god like an arrow. Just before contacting the domain formed by the blood god's power, energy rapidly enveloped his entire body. Ignoring the vampires who tried to block his way, Russell smashed through them. Bang bang bang, like striking an egg with a stone, the vast difference in physique and strength allowed Russell to easily crush the vampires blocking his path and reach the blood god. A powerful punch. Mental power swirled around him. Deacon Flowester crossed his arms in front of his chest, trying to block, but he was a beat too slow. The moment the fist struck, physical and mental energy were released, simultaneously damaging Deacon Flowerstuff's body and soul. His soul wounded, Deacon Flowerstuff couldn't help but scream. Although the tone was the same, it wasn't the blood god's voice. The blood god's consciousness had run away? No way, no way. A dimensional demon god, running away out of fear of being beaten? I thought you could control your consciousness and fight for someone else. A flash of blood, and Deacon Flowerstuff's body quickly healed. As long as the blood god didn't stop releasing energy, that was fine. Shaking his head inwardly, Russell withdrew his mental power. There was no need to use it against Deacon Flowerstuff, it would kill him anyway. Universe 404, outside Russell's universe. A majestic figure radiating crimson light, its body flowing with viscous blood, appeared. As the Lord of the Blood Dimension, the blood god's true form rarely left the blood dimension. This avatar was the strongest fighting force the blood god could summon outside the blood dimension. Finally arrived. Damn bug, I'll crush you. Thinking of the apostle Russell had brutally beaten for over half an hour, and the massive amount of energy consumed to protect him, the blood god felt a pang of heartache. The blood dimension was indeed vast and its energy nearly inexhaustible. But this was the accumulation of countless years within the blood dimension. Even as a dimensional lord, if he squandered it carelessly, he would incur the blood dimension's wrath. At that point, he risked being overthrown by other blood dimension demons. With this in mind, the blood god stopped supplying energy. Now that he had arrived, Deacon Flowerstuff was no longer of any use. Bang! Russell, expressionless, punched Deacon Flowerstuff in the face, shattering half his head. The recovery speed had slowed. Russell stopped, observing carefully. The blood god had stopped supplying energy. Sigh, he wondered when he would encounter such a generous patron again. With a thought, Russell opened his attribute panel name, Russell, Transcendent, Lifespan. 25/32343996 Constitution II. 100 Perception II. 100 Spirit II. 100 Talent 1 Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points, default is Lifespan. Talent 2 Attribute Transfer, Lifespan can be converted into Constitution, Perception, and Spirit. Description. Upgradable, estimated upgrade time is 3 months. Wow, the blood god exploded with so much energy? Russell hadn't paid attention to the attribute panel since his 3 attributes were maxed out at 100 points. Seeing the surplus energy now, he was startled. As for upgrading, Russell didn't consider it during battle. Learning from his previous experience, he couldn't filter energy attributes during the panel upgrade process. The energy absorbed during this time would become a mental burden. Russell, close the net, finish them off. The Ancient One's voice rang in his ears again. Her voice was complex, containing both regret and satisfaction. Sure enough, the current situation was orchestrated by the Ancient One. What was her purpose? Chapter 14 Blood God, it's fake, it's fake, it's all fake. Insects, I'm here. A cruel smile curled at the corner of the blood god's lips. His figure flashed, about to break through the dimensional barrier and descend upon Earth in Universe 404, bang! 3 enormous magic arrays radiating golden light appeared, forming a powerful magical shield that blocked the blood god. The Ancient One, clad in a yellow trench coat, stepped forward. Blood god, please return. There's nothing here that you seek. You are the guardian of this world. The blood god looked at the Ancient One before him, threateningly saying, you can't protect the thing. Finders get a share. Let me in, otherwise, even if you can kill this avatar of mine, you can't stop me from spreading the message. The moment he saw the Ancient One, the blood god felt a strong sense of crisis. But it didn't matter. What couldn't be obtained by force, could be obtained by strategy. Thing? What is it? The Ancient One chuckled, waving her hand, opening a gap in the magic array. Blood god, why don't you take another closer look? Is what you're looking for here? The blood god sent a wisp of divine power along the gap. Why does she seem so confident? Impossible, absolutely impossible. I saw it clearly then. It was the aura of eternity. As his divine power probed and the feedback came back, the blood god couldn't help but exclaim in shock. The aura of eternity, Ancient One chuckled. In the endless multiverse, where's there no eternity? The blood god's eyes turned bloodshot as he looked at Ancient One. I want to go in and see for myself. If it's not, blood god, you can stay here. Ancient One's voice turned cold, threatening. Don't be so shameless. Letting you see it is already giving you face. Whoosh. The blood god's breathing became heavy, 2 streams of crimson blood dripping into the void with each breath. Protecting the real world from being corrupted by magic is the responsibility of the Sorcerer Supreme. To dedicate oneself to the cause until death is the commitment of every Sorcerer Supreme. Ancient One spoke righteously. So there's no room for negotiation. The blood god secretly gathered energy. Having paid such a high price, he wouldn't give up until he saw it for himself. Even if this avatar died in battle. Want to go in? You'll have to pay more. No negotiation. Then, energy. As long as you can pay enough energy, it's fine to go in and take a look, the Ancient One explained. The blood god remained silent. In his endless years, such a shameless powerhouse was rare. Is she using a feigned retreat to bluff me, to dispel my doubts and protect the heart of eternity, or was all of this a scheme she set up from the beginning? I'll ask first before making any plans. How much energy? The Ancient One slowly extended a finger. Give me back the amount of energy you transferred to Earth without my permission. The blood god was furious. When did I ever need your permission to do anything? Fine, you can come with me to the blood dimension to get it. No, the Ancient One shook her head. Give me back the same amount you transferred to Earth. The blood god frowned, the blood flowing from his body increasing by 1/3. Following my method, I can give you twice as much. Sending energy from the blood dimension here, 9 out of 10 portions are consumed en route. So the blood god naturally disagreed with the Ancient One's plan. The Ancient One simply smiled at the blood god without speaking. You think I'm after the energy you transferred? Don't you even consider why the transmission loss was so high? Either hand over a portion of the energy, go in and take a look, and give up, or I'll personally extract that energy. Russell can act, but the Ancient One, can't? New York. Phew, finally got all these vampires under control. Gwen breathed a sigh of relief. As for the mask, it was long gone. Russell, why can you inflict irreparable damage on vampires? Tony landed and asked directly. Is it because of magic? Russell nodded. That's right. Tony frowned. If all magical creatures have this characteristic, there's another area where the armor needs upgrading. It's finally over. Blade also came over. Besides the SHIELD personnel, the 4 of them were outsiders and didn't need to participate in cleaning up the battlefield. But, won't it cause problems if we put them in charge of guarding these captured vampires? Blade had dealt with vampires for many years and knew all too well the attitudes of some high-ranking humans towards vampires. Now that an upgraded version has appeared, it's hard to guarantee that no one will have ulterior motives. Is it over? Not yet. Russell looked up at the sky. In that direction, 2 auras were confronting each other. One emanated the blood god's power, which he now recognized. The other should be the Ancient One. What were the Ancient One and the blood god doing? Would they fight? Probably. Suddenly, a portal glowing with fire opened not far away. The Ancient One stepped out first, followed by a man dressed similarly to her. Seemingly sensing someone watching him, the man looked this way. Russell's hair stood on end. The blood god. With just one glance, Russell recognized the man's identity. How did he get in? Blood god, don't forget our agreement, the Ancient One reminded him from the side, seemingly gentle. If you make a move, this avatar will have to stay. The blood god withdrew his gaze. Business was more important, he wouldn't bother with this insect. Haha, let SHIELD handle things here. Gwen, Tony, Blade, let's go back to the city and rest, Russell chuckled, suggesting they leave first. It wasn't safe here anymore, he needed to hide at the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. Tony couldn't see the Ancient One and the others, and unaware of the danger, politely declined. Russell, you're tired, go back first. I'll stay a little longer. In case something happens, I can provide timely support. Russell, is there some danger? Gwen suddenly asked. My spider sense just tripped. Russell nodded. Oh, my arc reactor is almost out of power, I need to go back and replace it. Tony changed his mind. Let's go back and rest. Blood God, how is it? I told you there's nothing you're looking for here. Nothing? How could there not be? Did I see wrong? Blood God muttered to himself. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Blood God suddenly sprang into action, unleashing a burst of energy at the Ancient One. You must have hidden it. The Ancient One summoned an energy shield, blocking Blood God's attack. Why bother, Blood God? Even now, you still won't admit defeat. As she spoke, the space around the Ancient One distorted. Blood God, if you want to see, I'll let you see clearly. The mirror space expanded rapidly. The Blood God didn't resist, allowing the mirror space to pull him in. So that's how it is. This was all your scheme. Fake, all fake. What eternal heart. It's all a lie. The Blood God's expression was crazed. In this round, he had lost completely. Blood God, please. The Ancient One opened a portal, gesturing for the Blood God to leave. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 The Supreme Mage? Me? October 31st, 2010, morning, Sanctuary, New York. So, the Blood God just left like that, without a fight. The Ancient One nodded with a smile. He didn't want to lose another avatar, and I didn't want to waste energy, so this is the end of it. Russell asked again. It's over. Good, Russell said excitedly. Then shouldn't I get my wages? Wages? The Ancient One asked, puzzled. The power of the Blood God, Russell reminded her. Didn't you take it yourself? The Ancient One countered, Russell having absorbed the considerable amount of energy while beating up Deacon Frost. That's what I earned myself. It doesn't count as wages, Russell argued. Then how much wages do you want? The Ancient One chuckled. Russell remained silent, unsure of the appropriate amount. Sorcerer, how much energy did you harvest this time? As he spoke, Russell released energy equivalent to 1 unit of attribute points, indicating this as a measure. The Ancient One slowly extended 2 fingers. 20 million, Russell asked. The panel absorbed about 2 layers of energy transmitted from the Blood God to Earth, totaling around 3.4 million. Did the Ancient One swindle some more from the Blood God? Otherwise, how could there be 20 million? The Ancient One shook her head. 2 million? That's too little. Russell shook his head, considering whether to forget about a payment. 2 small goals, the Ancient One smiled and said. Russell jumped to his feet, incredulous. How is that possible? The total energy transmitted from the Blood God to Earth wasn't even that much? Even if you took it all, you wouldn't have 200 million. What you see, and what the Blood God saw, may not be the truth. The Ancient One smiled meaningfully. Crack. Crack. The surrounding space cracked open, and the Ancient One pulled Russell into the mirror space. When the Blood God transmitted energy to Earth, I used the mirror space to divert it, the Ancient One explained, pointing to the largest sea of blood in the mirror space. Look, that's the total energy the Blood God transmitted to Earth. Russell looked around the mirror space. Closest to him were several seas of blood of varying sizes, and in the distance were various energy clusters with different attributes. He thought he wouldn't encounter a patron like the Blood God again for a long time, but unexpectedly, a big shot was right beside him. Want it? The Ancient One's calm voice was now full of temptation in Russell's ears. Yes, Russell nodded weakly. Then it's all yours, huh? Russell woke up with a start. What are the conditions? There's always an ulterior motive behind giving. His relationship with the Sorcerer Supreme wasn't that good. This energy is what I've accumulated over the years, through trickery and force, and it's also the main source of my magic power in battle, the Ancient One continued to explain. As long as you become the Sorcerer Supreme and take over from me to protect this world from being corrupted by magic, this energy will be of no use to me, So naturally I can give it to you. Was this a gift from a big shot? Russell hesitated. Are there any restrictions on becoming the Sorcerer Supreme? Russell, the Sorcerer Supreme has never had any restrictions. The Ancient One's voice was distant, as if recalling something. It's a responsibility. Accepting it will indeed mean losing a lot. What have you lost, Sorcerer Supreme? Russell asked. Freedom, and a peaceful night's sleep. The Ancient One sighed softly. I've carried this world on my back year after year. Russell, you will become stronger than me, and you will do better than me. For me, with this mountain of burdens, the future may be nothing more than a few trials for you. Sorcerer, are you trying to manipulate me? Russell murmured. He believed the Ancient One's words, but he wouldn't listen. The Ancient One brushed aside the question. There's no need to make a choice now, Russell. You can think about it slowly. His talent was too much of a counter to magical life forms, especially against those mediocre dimensional lords who relied on endless energy to cheat. As Russell left the Sanctum Sanctorum, a question suddenly occurred to him. Where's my pay? Using massive amounts of energy and the position of Sorcerer Supreme to distract me and take the opportunity to renege on my wages. The cunning Ancient One. With these thoughts in mind, Russell returned to the bookstore. He witnessed an intriguing scene. George Stacy from Universe 404 and Gwen Stacy from Universe 65 were staring at each other wide-eyed. Today is Halloween, and it happens to be Sunday. George came to the bookstore to invite the owner to the community party to celebrate Halloween together. Hello, young lady, it's presumptuous of me, but I still have to ask, do you know Helen? My goodness, you look so much like Helen when she was young. After a long stare, George was the first to come to his senses and asked, Helen? She's my goodness, is Helen still alive in this world? In Universe 65, Helen died when Gwen was young. George Stacy, George extended his hand. Helen never told me that she had a niece who looked so much like her. Gwen was a little flustered. After hesitating for a moment, she still took George's hand. Gwen Stacy, my goodness, you and my daughter's name sound the same, George exclaimed. But she's only 8 years old. As he spoke, George looked Gwen up and down carefully and praised, You're so beautiful. I hope little Gwen will be as beautiful as you when she grows up. I believe she will. Russell approached and said. Thank you for your kind words, Russell, George replied with a smile. By the way, are you coming to the Halloween party tonight? Gwen's eyes lit up at the mention of the party. At the party, she could meet her mother, Helen, the Helen of this universe. Of course, Russell readily agreed, seeing Gwen's expression. Gwen and I will be there on time. Okay, I'll go inform the others then. With that, George left the bookstore. After George had gone some distance, Gwen asked Russell, Do you know George? Russell looked away, nodded at Gwen, and said, Yes, can you tell me about George? And his wife, Helen? Gwen asked eagerly. She was eager to learn about the Stacy family in this universe. Gwen, why don't you go and see for yourself? Russell said meaningfully. He had long ago said that Gwen should see a psychologist. Mental illness requires mental medicine. Letting Gwen connect with George's family would be good for her mental health. Russell and George already knew each other. During his investigation, George discovers that Russell frequently appears at gang fights and various murder scenes. This is clearly unusual. Initially, George suspects Russell is not only a ruthless gangster but also a serial killer. However, further investigation reveals that these cases are independent, not a series. And the perpetrator is someone else entirely. Russell is simply a passerby who coincidentally appears at the scene. Sometimes, Russell will also provide George with information. Over time, Russell and George become acquainted. As for Russell's true purpose in appearing at these locations, it's naturally to harness the power of the dead. Chapter 16 Gwen and Little Gwen. On the 7th floor balcony of the bookstore, Russell, shirtless, lay on a wooden rocking chair, sunbathing and eating cantaloupe, thoroughly enjoying himself +1, +1, +1. After reaching tier 2 on his stat panel, the efficiency of his talent, energy absorption, in absorbing physical energy had been greatly enhanced. Russell was now practically a walking, breathing air conditioner, comfortable in winter and cool in summer. Unfortunately, his physique couldn't be improved like a Kryptonian simply by sunbathing. After all, their fundamental natures were different. For Russell, sunlight was energy. For Kryptonians, sunlight was a catalyst, stimulating them to develop their physical potential. Even more regrettably, the efficiency of converting natural energy into attribute points was still inferior to magical energy. But it was a steady, gradual process. Russell, Mr. Callison from SHIELD is looking for you. Let him come over, Russell responded lazily, still lying in the chair, showing no intention of getting up to greet him. Mr. Callison, my apologies, Russell apologized, though his tone lacked sincerity. As he spoke, Russell pointed to the other rocking chairs nearby. Lying in these is so comfortable, do you want to try them? Just call me Callison, Russell. Callison immediately bridged the gap between them. Here's a gift from SHIELD. Before Callison arrived, SHIELD had thoroughly investigated Russell and Gwen. Although they couldn't understand many of Russell's actions, a few things were certain. 1. Russell's identity file was problematic. 2. Russell had a connection to Kamartaj. 3. Russell's formidable combat power and controllability. SHIELD received information that an accident during a military experiment several years ago had created a powerful Hulk. However, this Hulk was almost uncontrollable. If deployed in combat, he would likely strike friendly forces first. Russell accepted Callison's gift, a complete file and American citizenship. Give me a green card, my country doesn't support dual citizenship. Russell pushed the file back, uninterested. Callison took the file with a puzzled look. Although Russell has an Asian appearance, based on the information gathered, SHIELD deduces that Russell is most likely not from Earth. Even if Russell were from Earth, his activity area doesn't suggest he's from East Asia. As for other small Asian countries, that's even less likely. Despite his confusion, Callison agreed, okay, Russell, what are your thoughts on SHIELD? Wait a minute, Russell interrupted, today is Halloween, it's Sunday, a holiday, alright, then happy Halloween in advance, Russell. SHIELD has a lot to do, I'll take my leave. Callison tactfully took his leave. He understood Russell's meaning. This was a subtle refusal to join SHIELD. People from Kamartaj are indeed difficult to approach, but there's no rush. Even if a deal falls through, goodwill remains. As long as Russell stays in New York, SHIELD will have plenty of opportunities to recruit him. Russell sighed. Although he was an orphan, he still missed home a little. Before he knew it, the sun was setting, and dusk had arrived. Russell, get up and get dressed for the party, Gwen urged Russell as she came to the balcony. Why did you sleep so long? Are you exhausted? Although he had participated in the battle against the vampires in the early morning, which had taken its toll and affected his sleep, they were superhumans with physical abilities and recovery speeds far exceeding those of ordinary people. They weren't weaklings like Tony Stark. Staying up all night would leave them exhausted. What, Gwen, do you want to try? Russell got up and dressed, eager to try. He hadn't forgotten the domestic violence Gwen had given him a few days ago. Gwen shook her head, she didn't want to be tortured. Although she didn't know why Russell had suddenly become stronger, his physical abilities completely overwhelmed hers. If you're alright, let's go. By the way, have you prepared your costume and candy? I'll always have my costume ready, so you haven't prepared candy. I trust the reliable Gwen to have it prepared for me. Night fell, and the party began as scheduled. This time, Russell wore a wizard's three-piece set, a wizard's hat, a yellow robe, and a staff. Gwen, dressed in her Spider-Man suit, was playing the Ghost Spider. Look, it's the Ghost Spider. Spider-Man truly lived up to his reputation as a good friend of New Yorkers. Gwen had only been in this world for less than a month, yet she was already quite famous in New York. Following the sound, Erin, dressed as a sorceress, was waving. The Ancient One, as promised, had cured her vampire's racial flaws, preserving her vampire form. As a result, Erin became a mini Superman. Trick or treat, Russell felt something bump into his foot and looked down. A little girl with long blonde hair, wearing a ghost cape. Mini Gwen. Here you go, little Gwen. Russell took out a candy Gwen had prepared and handed it to little Gwen. Taking the candy, little Gwen looked up and asked, how did you know I was Gwen? And why do you call me little Gwen? Because there's a big one here, Russell gestured, pointing to the Gwen beside him. Hello, little Gwen. Gwen crouched down, meeting little Gwen's gaze, and smiled. I'm Gwen too, Gwen Stacy. You're also called Gwen Stacy? We have the same name, little Gwen exclaimed. Huh? We look so alike, Gwen. "What are you doing here?" A young woman walked briskly over from a distance. The woman looked remarkably like Gwen, only more voluptuous. Helen. The vague image of her mother in Gwen's mind quickly became clear. She must be Helen. "Mommy," little Gwen whined, "I heard Ghost Spider was here, so I came to check." "You should have told me or George," Helen scolded. After gently scolding little Gwen, Helen looked at Russell and Gwen and apologized. "I'm sorry, Gwen." "Oh, you're the niece George mentioned, the one who looks a lot like me." Helen looked at Gwen, who was staring at her blankly, and seemed to remember something. She asked softly, "You're Gwen, right?" "Gwen from another world." Gwen stared blankly at Helen, her eyes welling up with tears. "Yes, I'm Gwen." "Mom." Gwen couldn't help but step forward and hug Helen. Helen gently patted Gwen's back, comforting her. "You've suffered a lot these past years, haven't you?" More than 10 years ago, Helen often had a dream. In the dream, she had a warm family. Her husband was handsome and dashing, a policeman. Her daughter was well-behaved and adorable, with blonde hair. Later, she met George and gave birth to a daughter. Only then did she remember this and tell George. The two believed it was God's guidance. Only now, seeing Gwen, did Helen remember the ending of the dream. She died, and George raised Gwen alone. Watching Gwen and Helen embrace, Russell silently left, giving them their own space. He also took an unexpected guest with him, Iron Man, Tony Stark. The story is already under contract, updates will be consistent. Please continue reading. Chapter 17. What if Iron Man becomes Doctor Strange or Doctor Doom? Iron Man. It's the real Iron Man. When Tony descended from the sky in his Mark IV, the children at the party went wild. Many others were cosplaying as Iron Man, but the difference between the real and fake was immediately apparent. The way he appeared, the cold, cool metallic look, it was something no fake could match. Even the adults were turning their heads. Tony Stark, the owner of Stark Industries and the infamous Playboy. Why wasn't he vacationing on his private yacht, villa, or island, at such an ordinary community party? "Hey kids. I didn't bring any candy." Tony removed his mask and joked with the children who surrounded him. "But if you want some, you can get some from my assistant." Even so, not a single child left Tony's side. Every now and then, a child would reach out to touch Tony's armor. "Feel free to touch it if you like. Don't worry, it won't break." With that, the armor opened, and Tony stepped out, leaving the armor behind. "Really? Thank you so much, Iron Man." Looking at Tony emerging from the crowd of children, Russell said, "Looks like kids prefer Iron Man to Tony Stark." "I am Iron Man," Tony said calmly, putting on his sunglasses. Damn, he got it. "Happy Halloween, Pepper, and Happy Halloween, Russell." This time, Russell didn't ignore Happy. Chapter 4. Tonight, Happy was cosplaying as Tony's bodyguard, not Tony's bodyguard. "Why are you here?" Russell asked directly. The incident early this morning was too big a deal, the news couldn't be contained, and some media outlets reported it, Tony explained. SHIELD asked me to create another big news story to divert public attention. Russell was silent. Was he showing off his popularity? Was popularity useful? "You're surrounded by enemies, don't you understand?" "I have no idea what happened in the early hours of the morning." Pepper turned to Tony, her eyes filled with worry and admiration. "I woke up to find out you guys saved New York." Tony noticed Pepper's gaze, his eyes flickered, and he didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he abruptly asked Russell, "I heard that the victims infected by vampires have all recovered. Is that magic?" "Yes, magic is amazing," Tony exclaimed, then, feigning nonchalance, leaned closer to Russell and whispered, "Shall we talk alone?" Russell returned a questioning look. Since magic can solve the vampire infection problem, can it cure palladium poisoning? After they walked away and made sure Pepper couldn't hear them, Tony got straight to the point. "So that's what you wanted to ask? Why all the secrecy?" Russell said, suddenly understanding. It seemed Tony had realized the dangers of palladium. As comrades in arms, Russell didn't intend to hide it from Tony and watch him suffer. Russell remembered that SHIELD possessed relics belonging to Tony's father, Howard Stark. From these relics, Tony could find a new element to replace palladium and solve the problem. But this would require Russell to explain the source of the information. Most of Tony's favors would also be taken by SHIELD. More importantly, Russell wanted to see another development. If Tony studied magic, would he become Doctor Strange or Doctor Doom? "Of course," Russell said confidently. Tomorrow we'll visit a sorcerer together. Aren't you a sorcerer? Tony asked in surprise. Can't you? Although Russell's fighting style was different from what Tony imagined a sorcerer to be, with such powerful combat abilities. He must at least be a high-level sorcerer, right? Russell blushed. I'm not good at healing. Tony looked at Russell suspiciously, noticing his unease. You're not a sorcerer, are you? What nonsense. I'm a melee sorcerer. Do you understand? Sorcerers are all melee these days. What's the use of fancy moves? Being able to fight is what matters, Russell argued loudly. What are you two arguing about? Perhaps Russell's voice was too loud, because Pepper came over and asked. Nothing, we were just discussing sorcerers. Tony changed the subject, not wanting Pepper to know about his palladium poisoning. By the way, Tony, Russell reminded him. The sorcerer you're meeting tomorrow is called the Ancient One, or the Sorcerer Supreme. You'd better watch your temper, otherwise, don't blame him if you get a scolding. Russell said this on purpose, to provoke Tony's rebellious spirit. Tony should enjoy the same treatment as Strange. Sure enough, upon hearing Russell's words, Tony raised an eyebrow. The Sorcerer Supreme? I hope he lives up to his name. The party ended, and everyone left with their own thoughts. My God, Helen, is this real? George exclaimed. You mean, your dreams were all things that actually happened in another universe? That Gwen is our daughter from another universe? It's unbelievable. I know it's hard to believe. Helen hugged George tightly, but it's true, George. In another universe, we're still husband and wife, and Gwen is still our daughter. George hugged Helen tightly too. I can't imagine losing you. At that moment, George felt deep sympathy for his other self. Yeah, me too. I can't imagine losing you and Gwen either. Meanwhile, in little Gwen's room. Little Gwen stared wide-eyed at Gwen. So, you're me when I grow up? No, it's another parallel universe. Gwen shook her head, then reached out and pinched little Gwen's cheek. I never imagined I was so cute as a child. Little Gwen frowned, pondering the relationship between parallel universes and the past and future. She finally came to a conclusion. So, you are me, and yet you are not me. Gwen fell silent. George and Helen in this world were little Gwen's parents, not hers. At this moment, she envied little Gwen immensely. She missed her father, director George Stacy of Earth 65, even more. 3,000 times. She missed home, but could she go back? Russell, I'm staying at Helen's tonight. I'm not going back. Looking at the text message on his phone, Russell fell silent. Come to think of it, Gwen has been here for several days now. Has she stayed overnight? I just want a roommate. Russell decided to put up the job posting again tomorrow. He took out his phone. Russell edited 2 text messages and then went to sleep. One for Gwen, I have read it. Also, don't keep anything to yourself, maybe I have a way. The other for the Ancient One. Master, Tony Stark and I will be visiting you tomorrow. Are you free? I've already promised him, so please make sure you have time. Chapter 18 I, Tony, have never been inferior to anyone in my life. The next day. Manhattan, New York, at the Yayo's home, Psychological Counseling Center. A silver Audi R8 pulled up in front of the clinic. Russell, didn't you say you were taking me to see that Sorcerer Supreme? Why is it a psychological clinic? I don't need therapy. Tony couldn't help but complain as he got out of the car. Russell led the way without turning his head. That's not the point. Iron Man is also the chairman of Stark Industries, isn't he? Arriving at the reception room, seeing the door was ajar, Russell walked straight in. Sorcerer, this is Tony Stark. Tony, this is the Ancient One. Russell introduced the two, then sat down to drink tea, ready to watch the show. The tea at the Ancient One's place is really good. It seems to have some honey in it. Hello, Tony, please sit down. The Ancient One smiled and stood up, poured Tony a cup of tea, and gestured for him to sit down. Tony took the tea, sat down, took a sip, and gave a thumbs up. Good tea. Then, they got straight to the point. You cured a girl named Erin yesterday? Someone infected with a vampire virus, sort of, Tony continued. You helped her remove the racial defects of vampires, without affecting any other bodily functions. Yes, Tony's tone quickened. How did you do that? She craved blood and feared sunlight. I told her she could overcome these, and she did. Tony was suspicious. You're not saying that was psychotherapy, are you? What if I told you that people can use their spiritual power to heal their bodies? How would you do that? The Ancient One opened a book, which contained an illustration of acupuncture points. She smiled and asked, "Do you like this picture?" "No," Tony shook his head. "Ancient One, let's be direct, okay? Seeing is believing, Master." "Why don't you let Tony experience it for himself?" Russell suddenly interjected. He wanted to see Tony rudely question the Ancient One, then have his soul knocked out by her palm. Not a friendly discussion between the two. "Okay," Tony was eager to try. "I'd love to experience magic for myself." The Ancient One and Russell laughed in unison. Bang! The next second, the Ancient One struck Tony's chest with her palm. Nothing happened, much to Russell's expectant gaze. Bang! Another palm struck Tony's shoulder, and Tony's soul flew out. "Sorry, I forgot about the arc reactor in your chest." A moment later, Tony's soul returned to his body. "There really is a soul," Tony murmured to himself. "That's amazing. Want to see something even more amazing?" the Ancient One asked with a smile. The next instant, Tony flew out and vanished into thin air. "Russell, you should try it too." "No, magic." Before he could finish speaking, a yellow flame suddenly flashed beneath Russell's feet, creating a circle of light. A split second before the yellow flame appeared, Russell got up and dodged. His perception ability was triggered, allowing him to foresee the future. Russell chuckled awkwardly. "Master, let's talk this out. There's no need for violence." "Russell, it seems I underestimated you," the Ancient One said, somewhat surprised. "However, some things might be beneficial for you to see." The next instant, the mirror space enveloped the entire reception room. The entire mirror space vanished from its spot. This time, Russell didn't dodge. In the future he saw, wherever he went, the mirror space extended there. Like Sun Wukong and Buddha. A bizarre and fantastical world unfolded before Russell and Tony's eyes. The material universe isn't everything. At the source of reality, spirit and matter are connected. This universe is just one of countless universes. Take a good look, this is the real universe. The Ancient One's voice rang in their ears, clarifying their doubts. After an unknown amount of time, they returned to the reception room. This was Russell's second time traversing the multiverse. The first time was when he was still an ordinary person, unable to see anything clearly. The second time was now, and he saw much more. More dimensional demons and energy dimensions. Wasn't this a moving attribute point? Want to learn? The Ancient One's calm voice rang out. "Sorcerer, teach me, X2. Alright, I'll teach you. Follow me." With that, the Ancient One opened a portal, leading directly to Kamartaj. By the way, these are slingshot rings. With proficient use, you can open portals to any place you wish to go. You can even travel through the multiverse, handing the two slingshot rings to the two. The Ancient One continued, "You are different from other sorcerers. You don't need to stay in Kamartaj all the time. After learning to use the slingshot rings, you can go back. Just come here to learn whenever you have time." "Thank you, sorcerer," the two said in unison. The Ancient One put on the slingshot rings and personally demonstrated for the two. "Concentrate and visualize the place you want to go." As she spoke, she drew a circle with two fingers together. Where her fingertips passed, flames appeared. Then they quickly spread, forming a portal. On the other side of the portal was the reception room where they had come from. "That sounds pretty simple," Tony laughed. He then put on the slingshot rings and imitated the Ancient One's movements with great enthusiasm. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles. Occasionally, a tiny spark would appear. Russell shook his head and smiled. "It's pretty simple." With that, Russell put on his sling ring. Through the ring, Russell saw the faint, special magical power permeating the surrounding space. His mental energy surged towards the ring on his finger, connecting with this special magical power. His perception instantly expanded infinitely outward. At the same time, a pressure acted on his mind. This method of perception lacked precision, but its range was greatly enhanced. Soon, Russell had brought the entire Earth into his perception. "Russell, what are you standing there for? Have you even forgotten how to move?" Seeing Russell hadn't moved for a long time, Tony mocked. "Want me to teach you?" Whoosh! One after another, portals appeared around Russell. The portals led to all corners of the world. The closest was in the courtyard, the furthest beyond the solar system. A sorcerer, Tony stared blankly at the scene. "Weren't you supposed to draw circles?" The Ancient One looked at Russell, increasingly pleased. But she first comforted Tony. "Drawing circles is just an aid, mental strength and proficiency are key. Tony, don't be discouraged, your talent is also excellent. It's just that Russell himself is an extremely powerful superhuman, his mental strength is far greater than yours. But with training, your mental strength will also continuously improve. Tony looked at Russell enviously. Like Russell, the Ancient One remained silent. With Russell's talent, it was almost impossible for anyone to surpass him in pure numerical terms. For a sorcerer, mental strength is certainly important. But wisdom, knowledge, comprehension, and creativity are equally important. These are your strengths, Tony. After comforting Tony, the Ancient One instructed Russell, concentrate your mental energy, instead of releasing it aimlessly. That way, you can see further. Chapter 19 Spider-Man Parallel Universe. I see. No wonder Doctor Strange's portals can traverse thousands of light years, while mine can barely leave the solar system. Right, portals can also travel through the multiverse. Does that mean I can go to Gwen's universe, Earth 65? Thinking it over, he asked, Sorcerer, how can one use a portal to travel through the multiverse? The Ancient One pondered for a moment before replying, don't extend your mental power far away, but perceive the subtle details. The quantum realm is the passage to the multiverse. The quantum realm? That's not physics, how does it relate to magic? Hearing the Ancient One's words, Tony exclaimed in surprise. Today's events were reshaping his worldview. Science is magic, and magic is science, the Ancient One explained slowly. Both are methodologies for studying the laws of the objective world, with no essential difference. Tony, the power of the mind and the power of the soul both exist objectively. Hearing the Ancient One's explanation, Tony muttered to himself. Muttering about materialism and idealism, Russell continued, ignoring Tony. Sorcerer, how do I go to Gwen's original universe? Gwen's original universe, along with 4 other universes, is entangled with one other universe. Using a portal, you can only reach the universe at the center of this entanglement. Only by separating these 6 universes can you travel to the others, the Ancient One added. According to the universe numbering system, that universe is numbered 1610. A thought flashed through Russell's mind. He remembered an animated film, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. Sorcerer, so if we just separate them, it'll be fine, right? Yes, the Ancient One nodded. But this incident involves the creation of a powerful ancient god. Unless there's a major disaster, no one is willing to intervene. Russell frowned. He still wanted to give Gwen a surprise. Gwen had been busy investigating the blood god incident for him. Russell, if you want to get involved, it shouldn't be a problem, the Ancient One suddenly said. You and Gwen have a close relationship, and you're relatively weak. Russell, sorcerer, how do you know everything? In this incident, there's a universe numbered 616, and there's also a me in that universe. Sometimes, we communicate using a spell. Russell was puzzled. Night walking? Doesn't that require the dark tome as a casting tool? Seemingly noticing Russell's confusion, the Ancient One explained, magic is simply a way of using energy. Once you understand it thoroughly, you can reproduce it. The Ancient One's lips curled up, revealing the same smile she had when she instructed Russell to handle the vampire incident last time. Russell, I can send you and Gwen to that universe 1610. After you get there, the one in universe 616, will keep an eye on you. When you resolve this incident and want to return, he will send you back. Russell felt something was amiss. After a moment's thought, he suddenly realized, you sorcerers want to resolve this matter, but it's difficult for you to act directly. You want me to handle it? The Ancient One smiled and nodded. This matter has been dragging on for a while, it would be best to resolve it quickly. Moreover, he could show off his successor to the Ancient One in another universe. Stephen Strange? Who's that? I don't know him. Then I'll go discuss it with Gwen. With that, Russell conjured a portal and appeared directly at George's doorstep. He rang the doorbell. Just a moment, I'll be right there, George's voice rang out, and the door opened shortly after. Seeing that it was George who opened the door, Russell asked curiously, George, why aren't you at work? George gave Russell a strange look before speaking. I took the day off. Take the day off? Aren't you a model worker in the NYPD, Gwen? George whispered a reminder. After something like this, how could someone be so carefree as to go to work normally? By the way, Russell, what are you doing at my house? George blocked the door, looking at Russell warily, like an old father guarding against a young punk. Russell said quietly, George, you weren't like this when you asked me for clues before. George smiled awkwardly. stepped aside, and whispered as Russell passed by, "When did you find out?" "When I first met Gwen." "What? How did you find out?" Gwen's voice came from inside the house. With Spider-Man's hearing, it was impossible for him not to hear. "Remember? When we first met, you said you were Ghost Spider when you left," Russell explained. "Is there anything special about that? It can't be that my reputation has spread to this universe, can it?" Gwen asked, puzzled. "There are many Spider-Women in the multiverse, but there is only one Ghost Spider," Russell said meaningfully. "What do you mean?" "Literally, in the Spider-Man works that Russell knew before his time travel, there were several Spider-Women, but only one Spider-Gwen. And Spider-Gwen also had a code name, Ghost Spider." "What are you talking about?" "Come and eat." At this moment, Helen came out and invited them to eat. "Russell, you're here. Let's eat together." At the dinner table, Russell noticed a change in Helen's attitude towards him. The previous times he'd visited, Helen had treated him like a normal guest. But now, she was as warm as if she were welcoming a prospective son-in-law. What had Gwen said to them last night? "Gwen, I have something to tell you." Both Gwens looked at him simultaneously. "It's probably about you, sister." The atmosphere became slightly awkward as the younger Gwen spoke to the older one. Russell and Gwen went to the rooftop alone. "I found a way back to your universe, thank you, Russell." But Gwen's expression was conflicted. On one hand, she missed her father on Earth 65, on the other hand, she was reluctant to leave Stacy's family on Earth 404. Seeing that Gwen seemed to have misunderstood something, Russell explained, "This method allows free travel between the two universes. If you want to come back, you can do so anytime." "I see," Gwen sighed with relief. "Then let's tell George and Helen and leave." "Of course," Russell nodded in agreement. After Russell explained the whole story, Helen happily said, "Gwen can go home." "That's great. But Gwen, you must come visit us often." George paused for a moment, then said, "Wait a minute, I'll write a letter to George in another universe." Helen reacted and said, "I'll write a letter to that George too." Little Gwen joined in, "Then I'll write a letter to George too." Kamartaj. "Ready?" "Yes," Russell and Gwen nodded. "Then, have a pleasant journey." The portal opened, and Russell and Gwen disappeared into it. "Mage, I understand. I understand." Before the portal closed, Tony's shouts faintly came from another universe. A newbie humbly begs to read more. Chapter 20 Russell, I am the Wizard Spider-Man. 1610. A dark and stormy night outside a manor on the outskirts of New York. Three figures were lurking furtively. "It's confirmed. Miles and Bellyhead Peter will be transferred here tonight." The speaker was dressed in a black suit and cloak, Spider-Man Noir. Spider-Man Noir whispered to his two companions, "Will lie in wait and rescue them when the opportunity arises." "Could this be a trap?" asked Spider-Ham, the small, pig-like character. "Even if it's a trap, we have to try," Spider-Man Noir explained. "In this universe, our bodies are becoming increasingly weak. Only Penny's fighting ability is relatively intact. We need new reinforcements. Also, Kingpin will definitely be guarding the Time Collider and won't be here. This is our chance, because several universes are connected, their cells are decaying. As time goes on, their bodies will become increasingly weak." At this moment, Penny reminded the two, "They're here. Remember, our goal is to rescue people, not to fight." The vehicle came to a stop, and Peter the Belly and Miles were carried out. They appeared to have been injected with tranquilizers. Spider-Man Noir blended into the shadows, silently approaching. Suddenly, he pounced, knocking down the enemies with a few punches and kicks. Whoosh! 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 The manor lights came on, and several teams of fully armed gangsters poured out. An ambush had indeed been set up. But, whoosh, a thick spider web shot from afar, sticking to Spider-Man Noir's wrist. Spider-Man Noir quickly rotated his wrist several times to reinforce it. Miles on his left, Peter the Belly on his right. Penny, on the other side, activated the robotic Spider-Man, about to pull the web and carry the three away. Trying to leave? Not so easy. A female version of Dr. Octopus appeared, using her tentacles to cut the web. "Spider-Man, tonight is your doom." The thugs quickly surrounded Spider-Man Noir. Inside the encirclement, Spider-Man Noir remained calm. "I still have a backup plan." A fierce battle was about to erupt. Just then, the flames beneath Spider-Man Noir's feet dissipated. The next instant, Spider-Man Noir vanished from his spot. "What happened?" "This wasn't my backup plan," Inside an ordinary room in an ordinary, unfinished building, 6+1 Spider-Men were either standing or lying down, waiting for Peter Parker and Miles to wake up from their anesthesia. "Can someone tell me what happened?" Russell asked first. Because Gwen had accidentally ended up in Universe 404, the original storyline had been completely distorted. Russell needed to understand the situation. Peter Parker explained. Because of a Kingpin space-time collider, several Spider-Man's universes were connected. To break the connection, the particle collider had to be destroyed. But Miles damaged the USB drive that could destroy the particle collider. He and Miles could only infiltrate Kingpin's company to copy the data. During their retreat, they were captured. Spider-Man Noir added that after learning about Kingpin's plans in this world, he tried to stop him. But their combined strength wasn't enough, so they planned to rescue the other two Spider-Men first. "And you two, who are you?" Spider-Man Noir asked. Through his spider sense, he could sense that Gwen was also a Spider-Man. But why was she appearing so late? Was there any other special information? Gwen Stacy, Ghost Spider-Man, Gwen, Fat Peter exclaimed. But then his expression darkened. And he said nothing more. The Gwen before him was clearly not the Gwen from his universe. "Russell, Wizard Spider-Man," Russell introduced himself solemnly. As the saying goes, when you're out in the world, you choose your own identity. Inside the room, the 6 Spider-Men all looked at Russell. Didn't you know that Spider-Men have a spider sense when they meet? What, you don't believe me? Russell secretly activated a spider totem he had picked up when he arrived in this universe. It came from Universe 1610, from Spider-Man Peter Parker, who died at Kingpin's hands. The panel was still upgrading, he hadn't absorbed this power yet. As the spider totem was activated, the others looked at Russell with increasingly strange expressions. Why was he suddenly experiencing spider sense again? Could he really be the sorcerer Spider-Man? Russell explained, "I'm a sorcerer, so it makes sense that I know how to conceal the power of my spider totem." "Right, it makes perfect sense," Spider-Ham nodded. His universe had all sorts of extraordinary powers. He was knowledgeable, unlike Spider-Men from other universes who were ignorant. "Okay, I know what's going on. Let's speedrun." After the joke, Russell became serious. Speedrun, X6. First, we need to go to Kingpin's office and copy the data. With that, Russell opened a portal with a thought, leading directly to Kingpin's office. Spider-Man Noir, Penny, and Peter Burke's expressions changed. They had just been teleported away by this thing. "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and copy the data." "Oh," the belatedly realizing what was happening, Peter Burke finally reacted. "I figured it out later. We just need to repair the USB drive, we don't need to copy the data again. Besides, Kingpin's computer has a lot of files, and we don't even know which one is the correct one." Russell was silent. "What about the USB drive? It was taken." Peter with a belly gave an awkward smile. "I've already copied the data," Penny from the future suddenly said. "Very good, as expected of the high-tech Spider-Man," Russell nodded in satisfaction. "Thank you for the compliment, Wizard Spider-Man," Penny returned a smile. "Next, let's go to Kingpin's tower and destroy the particle collider." The portal opened again. "Be careful, Kingpin is very powerful," Spider-Man Noir warned. "Dr. Octopus is not to be underestimated either," Peter with a belly added. Russell smiled slightly. "People are different from each other. Spider-Men are the same." He stepped out of the portal. Kingpin had already laid a trap there. But, gangsters, mercenaries? How? Russell chuckled. The next second, mental power swept through. In an instant, the clouds in the sky were torn apart, and moonlight poured down. Under the moonlight, the 6 Spider-Men could see clearly as one fully armed mercenary after another fell unconscious. "That's really powerful Sorcerer Spider-Man," Russell murmured, speaking for everyone. A few villains remained standing. Russell didn't care who they were. Except for the Prowler, who was Uncle Miles, killing him by mistake wouldn't be easy to explain. With a flick of his finger, invisible energy condensed into a tangible bullet, which shot out. Passing through a tiny portal, it instantly and accurately hit someone's head. "Okay, who's going to handle the rest? We can't just slack off and let me do everything myself, can we?" The Spider-Men exchanged glances. The problem that had been bothering them for half a month was solved just like that? A sorcerer Spider-Man, terrifying indeed. P.S. The time wasn't wrong. I'll explain later why half a month passed in Universe 1610, while about 20 days passed in Universe 404. The spider totem they found came from Peter Parker in Universe 1610. Sorry, the text didn't explain it clearly. Chapter 21 Gwen and George, Russell and the Ancient One. Earth 65, Queens, New York. Back home, Gwen frowned. Nobody home? George wasn't home? Was he too busy with some case? Thinking this, Gwen turned on the living room light. There was no clutter, the furniture was neatly arranged. But many places were covered in a thin layer of dust. Downstairs, George sat in his car, his eyes glazed. He had been sitting there for a long time. Every night since Gwen disappeared. Why was the living room light on? Had a burglar broken in, or Gwen had returned? Drawing his sidearm, George rang the doorbell. Gwen, George called from outside, his voice filled with hope and fear. Dad, the door opened, and father and daughter embraced excitedly. The time apart hadn't been long, but the longing and worry had stretched it infinitely. It's good you're back, it's good you're back. George's hand trembled as he patted Gwen's back. When Gwen first disappeared, George thought she had run away from home and was furious. Although the father and daughter sometimes had minor conflicts, why did it have to come to this? After investigating, they couldn't find a trace of Gwen. George began to panic, worried that Gwen was being targeted by a criminal who hated him. Dad, I'll explain slowly to you. Seeing the gray hair at George's temples and the wrinkles around his eyes, and comparing it to the young and cheerful George of another universe, Gwen felt even more sorry for her father. What a touching scene. As the mirror space expanded, a voice rang out. A white-bearded old man with an ethereal air slowly solidified. Earth 616, the Ancient One from the main universe. Ancient One, Russell bowed. Ancient One, male version, the Ancient One smiled and returned the bow, praising, "She's been mentioning you to me a lot lately. You are indeed a handsome young man." Faced with the Ancient One's praise, Russell was momentarily at a loss for words. Not out of shyness, but because he didn't know how to distinguish between appropriate forms of address. Don't worry about the title, we're both the Ancient One. Seeing Russell's hesitation, the Ancient One explained. Mind reading? Russell was surprised. You don't know it? That shouldn't be the case, the Ancient One countered. Seeing your open mind, I thought you were deliberately exposing yourself. Russell's face darkened, and he quickly regained his composure. At the same time, he activated his senses to the fullest, trying to detect the Ancient One's mental fluctuations. See, you can do it, can't you? The Ancient One initially let Russell read her mind without any defenses. Then, she blocked Russell's perception. Russell said softly, "Master, isn't this tiring?" The Ancient One smiled and shook her head. "Since I left my body and existed as a spiritual entity, this has become my instinct, like breathing. It's only tiring to control myself from perceiving. You're a young person, you should take care of this old man." A spiritual entity? After the Ancient One's reminder, Russell realized. Upon closer observation, although the Ancient One's body seemed substantial, it lacked a tangible feel, being formed from pure spiritual power. "Master, you?" Russell asked in confusion. Has she already abandoned the job and shifted the blame to Doctor Strange? Just a physical body, the Ancient One waved her hand dismissively. You don't understand yet. At my level, there's no difference between the spirit and the body. The Ancient One's spiritual power flowed. Her body shifting back and forth between the physical and spiritual forms. And another thing, my physical body is ultimately mortal. You're different, don't follow my example. Russell recalled what the Blood God's consciousness had said a few days ago when it descended. Deacon Frost's physical aptitude was average. Even at its limit, it was equivalent to a physique of around 40-50 tons at the transcendent level. Reference strength. 40-50 tons. Sorcerer, is there a limit to physical enhancement? The Ancient One looked at Russell strangely. Both the body and the soul have limits. To break through those limits, you either need a special opportunity or rely on the power of the mind. Relatively speaking, the power of the mind has a higher compatibility with the soul. Therefore, the soul is more likely to break through its limits. After saying this, the Ancient One carefully examined Russell. Your body, soul, and mind have reached a critical balance and are undergoing a transformation. Your foundation is quite solid. You shouldn't be unaware of these things, right? How did my other self teach you? Russell looked at the Ancient One with an obedient expression. Did he need to understand? You haven't encountered your limit yet. Suddenly, The Ancient One reacted and asked. Yes, Russell nodded obediently, waiting for the master's lecture. That makes sense, the Ancient One stroked her beard. Your talent is good. Although your individual attributes are not as strong as some naturally powerful races, your strength lies in your balance, giving you more potential for development. You are born to be a mage. Strong, balanced attributes are not Russell's talent. Deep Blue, activate, name, Russell, transcendent, lifespan. 25/323, 4399, Constitution II. 100, Perception II. 100, Spirit II. 100, Talent 1, Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points, default lifespan. Talent 2, Attribute Transfer, lifespan, can be converted into Constitution, Perception, and Spirit. Note, upgrading, approximately 3 months remaining. Russell's talents are Energy Absorption and Attribute Transfer. The female Ancient One should have guessed most of it. She might not know that absorbing energy can convert lifespan. Clearly, she hadn't told the other Ancient Ones in the multiverse this. By the way, what spells have you learned? Ancient One asked curiously. The other version of her had been showing off to him quite a bit lately. Russell held up one finger. Learned them all. 1. As he spoke, a portal opened, leading directly to the outside of the mirror dimension. Ancient One fell silent, somewhat conflicted. Your portal research is quite good, you can even pass through my mirror dimension's blockade, but why do you only know one spell? Ancient One suddenly realized. Wait, you just used your psychic abilities. In Universe 1610, you also used a spell similar to energy projection. Russell scratched his head. Is that a spell? Isn't it enough to just have hands? Ancient One took a deep breath, even though a spiritual body doesn't need to breathe. How long have you been learning spells? Russell held up another finger. So, this is what the female Ancient One felt back then. A day, Russell was surprised. Sorcerer, how did you guess? Well, so, the Ancient One said calmly. Stephen Strange, my most prized disciple. Now, we're not close anymore. The father and daughter outside are almost done talking. I'll be going now. The Ancient One's figure gradually dissipated, giving one last instruction. Come to Kamar Taj tomorrow, I'll show you a good treasure. The mirror space dissipated, and Russell didn't appear directly in Gwen's house. Instead, he left first, then opened a portal. A moment later, he passed through the portal and appeared openly in the living room. Russell did this intentionally. Crossing the multiverse was too unbelievable. No matter how Gwen explained, George wouldn't really believe it. He just wanted Gwen back and didn't want to pursue the matter for now. But facts speak louder than words. This was Russell's purpose. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 The Time Stone? A Fake. Nepal, Kamar Taj, the Ancient One's courtyard. In the afterglow of the setting sun, a figure leaned against a tree, eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Russell was catching up on sleep. He hadn't woken up early in a long time. Thinking of his promise to the Ancient One the night before, Russell unusually got up early. However, he was careless. Nepal and New York have a time difference. The former is in the Eastern Time Zone, UTC +5, the latter in the Western Time Zone, UTC +5. Nepal time is about 10 hours ahead of New York time. Whoosh! In his drowsy state, Russell heard something being thrown at him. He could dodge, but didn't want to move. It wouldn't hurt if it hit him anyway. Thud! A subdued green gemstone struck Russell's forehead, then landed in his pocket. Russell stretched, slowly waking up. The moon was already high in the sky. The Ancient One slowly walked out of the room. Didn't I tell you to come tomorrow, Master? Time difference? The Ancient One remained silent. After a moment, she spoke. Russell, what do you think time is? What the Ancient One asked wasn't the definition or concept of time. Russell focused his mind, carefully sensing the passage of time. The gem in his arms emitted a green light. Russell's perception of time was even more acute. Speed, the speed at which time passes. Time passes at different speeds for different objects. Russell looked at the Ancient One in confusion. Ancient One, Want to know, Russell? Yes, the Ancient One pointed to the green gem in Russell's arms. Here, the time stone. Go find the answer yourself. This is the time stone. Russell picked up the gem in his arms, incredulous. Yes, I just made a replica, the Ancient One said calmly. How you? Russell breathed a sigh of relief. He thought the gem was commonplace. It turned out to be a fake. The Ancient One added, its function is similar to the time stone, but the effect might be slightly weaker. And it doesn't have the characteristic of unlimited energy. Activating it requires consuming your own energy. Russell looked at the time stone in his hand, his expression conflicted. Would it consume energy? He wondered if the intangible energy representing constitution and the spiritual energy representing spirit would work. Paying with his life force was out of the question. He needed to save it for attribute points. One time versus permanent. Russell still felt the permanent option was more important. He'd try spiritual energy first. Spiritual energy surged into the time stone. Instantly, the scene in the courtyard flashed through his mind, then quickly disappeared. In the image, Russell and the Ancient One sat silently for a long time before Russell finally took his leave. Was this foresight? Russell opened his eyes, looking at the time stone in surprise. His perception, ability to foresee the future had been amplified nearly 100-fold. Suddenly, the Ancient One stood up and spoke. Russell, what would you like to drink? Coffee or tea? As she spoke, the Ancient One winked at Russell. This scene wasn't in the future. Russell suddenly understood. Master, I understand. You're trying to tell me that the future is just a deduction, a possibility. The important thing is, what kind of future do I choose? The Ancient One nodded meaningfully. I just want to tell you that the future is uncertain. The latter part about choosing the future is for you to figure out yourself. If you cause trouble later, it's not my problem, Russell. You can play by yourself. If you don't understand something, come ask me tomorrow. With that, the Ancient One took out a hammock and tied it to 2 trees in the yard. I've been busy all day. Time to sleep. Russell shook his head and chuckled. The Ancient One was trying to get rid of him. With a single step, a halo flashed, and Russell found himself on a deserted island. Just then, a red sun rose over the sea. The sun had risen. It wasn't that Russell and the Ancient One lacked a sense of time. Time zones applied to ordinary people, but weren't so friendly to sorcerers. On the deserted island, Russell continued to familiarize himself with the time stone. Gwen and George. With a wave of his hand, an image moved in front of him and began to play. In the image, George was explaining to their teacher why Gwen hadn't been to school for the past 2 weeks. This image had occurred a few hours earlier and was recorded by the time stone. 2 weeks? Shouldn't it be more than 20 days? Russell pondered, then suddenly realized. It was the speed of time's passage. The speed of time's passage in both universes fluctuated within a certain range. Therefore, an error occurred. What was the speed of time's passage related to? Speed? Mass? Energy? In the macroscopic realm? Too complicated, I don't understand. It seems I'm still more suited to being One Punch Man. With a sigh, Russell began to deduce Gwen and George's future. Let me clear the minefield for you. So that when I leave this universe and return, some irreversible tragedy won't have occurred. While the gems could be reversed, they only reverse time, not events. Once an event happens, it happens. Life experiences events, not time. Russell seemed to understand something. When Russell began his deductions, he found it much more difficult than expected. Each time a choice was presented, several branches of varying thickness appeared. The thickness represented the probability of occurrence. A choice appeared almost every short period. Feeling his mental energy rapidly depleting, Russell stopped the deduction. This method was wrong. A person faces countless choices, but many are insignificant. Only a few are truly important. Russell tried again. This time, he ignored the minor branches and focused on the key points. Finally, he saw it. A major minefield in Gwen and George's lives. The event occurred several months later, one night. Ghost Spider was injured and surrounded by police cars. And George, protecting the Ghost Spider, he tried to explain to his colleagues. Finally, the police were persuaded, opened the perimeter, and let the Ghost Spider leave. Afterwards, George was held accountable and dismissed. Just as Russell was suppressing his anger and continuing to watch, the image collapsed and disappeared. How could this happen? Russell couldn't help but exclaim. Gwen just chose a low probability branch, and reality overwrote the deduction. Is this method of deduction also wrong? The deduction itself is wrong. Russell had a flash of inspiration. The important thing is not how many possibilities there are in the future, but which future to choose. Sensing that his mental energy was about to be exhausted, Russell stopped studying the gem. He would rest for a while and wait for his mental energy to recover. Then, he would go straight to their door. Although the scene he had just deduced did not show the figure of the mastermind, Russell had a general understanding of the plot. In the original plot, George pointed a gun at Gwen. There were several versions of the mastermind. One was George himself, one was Kingpin, and one was Mark Murdock. But now the plot had broken down, ruling out George. So it was either Kingpin or Mark Murdock. If they were good people, Russell would still have the psychological burden of judging them as sinners of the future. But in Earth 65, neither of them were good people. Just to be on the safe side, he would investigate again. To avoid wrongly killing innocent people. Alright, there was also a criminal organization called Spider-Silk. He would deal with them as well. Russell silently sentenced the above-mentioned people to death in his mind. Chapter 23 mourns the renowned philanthropist, Mr. Kingpin. Let us welcome Mr. Wilson Grant Fisk, a renowned entrepreneur, philanthropist, New York City Council member, and mayoral candidate for New York City, to give a speech. A middle-aged man, dressed in an expensive custom-made suit, with a broad build and a muscular physique, strode confidently to the front of the stage. His imposing figure was as dangerous as a beast, yet his smile was as warm as a spring breeze. I speak on behalf of the citizens who deeply love this city. Every time I see Hell's Kitchen in such chaos, and the people living there in such suffering, my heart aches. I swear, I will rebuild it. Restoring New York's glory is our inescapable duty. Russell hesitated to kill Kingpin. Not because his speech was passionate and inspiring, but because Kingpin was too dark. In Russell's energy perspective, Kingpin's soul was profoundly black, constantly exuding an aura of sin. The evil of his soul was something Russell had never seen before. Compared to him, Kingpin from 1610 was a mere novice. Conservatively estimated, he had 443 attribute points. You know, an ordinary mafia boss only has 5 to 20 points. This is your last chance, Mr. Fisk. I hope you can seize it. With a sigh, Russell activated the time stone. Kingpin's past unfolded. He killed his father as a child and joined the mafia. After becoming a gang leader, he committed murder, arson, and even murdered his wife to prove his power. Just kill him, but don't absorb the energy. The panel is still upgrading and can't filter it, lest it affect his mood. Having made up his mind, Russell didn't hesitate any longer. An invisible energy quietly seeped into Kingpin's brain. In front of everyone, I'll give you some dignity. Combined with his perception ability, he launched a fierce attack. Several arteries in the brain's functional areas were torn apart. Kingpin looked pained, and his massive body crashed to the ground. Mr. Fisk, Mr. Fisk, what's wrong? Ambulance, call an ambulance. Chaos erupted at the scene, and Russell quietly left. Next up was Mark Murdock. In Universe 404, Russell was Mark Murdock's client and Daredevil's ally. Russell's credentials were obtained with Mark's help. Before accumulating enough attribute points for the first stage of his character's upgrade, Russell's daily routine consisted of wandering around Hell's Kitchen every night. During this time, Russell helped Daredevil several times. Mark Murdock, I hope you're a lawyer, not a mob boss. Although we're from two different universes, if I could, I still wouldn't want to kill you. Russell hailed a taxi and said, hello, to the Nelson Murdock firm. The Nelson Murdock firm? Newly opened? Sorry, sir, I don't know. Perhaps you could point me to. Russell's heart sank. He handed the taxi driver a large green bill. This is your tip. I don't need the car anymore. Russell moved to another spot and hailed a few more taxis. The answer was the same. If the firm existed, then Mark was a lawyer, not a mob boss. Conversely, it didn't prove Mark was a mob boss. But, oh well, a little extra work is fine. I'll find it myself. He calmed himself and activated his mental power. Russell listened intently to every sound in New York City. Murdock. Kingpin's death is suspicious. The killer might be right there. Why did you let them leave? Is Daredevil Kingpin's version? Russell sighed. Mark, you won't blame me for killing a variant of you, will you? Murdock, did you kill the boss? A bodyguard in a black suit stepped forward, pointing at Mark and shouting. Bang! A gunshot rang out. What kind of person are you? daring to point at Mr. Murdoch. In an instant, Kingpin's former subordinates split into 3 camps. The Mark Murdoch camp and the anti-Mark Murdoch camp drew their guns and confronted each other. The neutral side retreated to the side, watching coldly. Bang! 20 blocks away, Russell gestured for a shot. This shot, invisible energy solidified into tangible form, passed through a portal, and instantly reached Mark Murdoch's forehead. Mark Murdoch fell to the ground. Then, gunfire erupted. He left without a trace, concealing his merit and fame. Time to go home for dinner. As for the remaining Spiderweb organization, such criminal organizations are difficult to investigate. Like the vampire case, he'll leave it to Gwen to investigate. Once they've found out, he'll make the final decision. Accompanied by golden light, Russell appeared in Gwen's living room. Good evening, George. Good evening, Gwen. Good evening, Russell. X2 Gwen was already used to Russell's way of making appearances. Since learning the portal magic yesterday, he hadn't walked properly anymore. Everywhere he went was a portal. At dinner, Russell noticed that George's gaze was a little strange. Like Helen from Earth 404. Gwen, are you going out again tonight? George suddenly asked. Last night, when Gwen explained her whereabouts to George, she also told him about her Spider-Man identity. Yes, Gwen nodded. Dad, you told me Spider-Man could help more people. George frowned. He had indeed said that. Gwen, I'm not against you helping others. But right now, Spider-Man is a criminal. Dad, I've explained it to you. I didn't kill Peter. He died from the side effects of the lizard serum. Gwen's voice was impulsive. She couldn't accept that her closest person didn't believe her. Gwen, I believe you, George reassured her. The police need evidence, and you won't agree to me reopening the investigation. I don't want anyone else to know that the monster was Peter. Gwen's voice was low. Between Ghost Spider-Man's innocence and her deceased friend's reputation, she chose to preserve the latter. There's a kind of magic that can make everyone in this world forget that Spider-Man killed Peter Parker, Russell interjected. But there's a problem, the file can't be deleted, George. As long as no one remembers this, I can close the case directly and then seal the file. Gwen looked at Russell and George gratefully. Russell, George, thank you. George looked at Russell. Shall we start now? Russell calculated the time and shook his head. Tomorrow. It was about 4 or 5 in the morning in Nepal, and the Ancient One was still asleep. Gwen looked at George with pleading eyes, eager to try. She couldn't wait. George hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. Just one night, nothing should go wrong, right? Yay, Gwen cheered, went back to her room and changed from her school uniform into her battle suit. New York City, your good neighbor tonight, the Ghost Spider-Man is back. After all, she's just a big girl. Russell shook his head and chuckled. Want to go out and have fun? Didn't expect that, did you? Russell boss would give you a mission. In front of George, Russell used his newly learned telepathic ability. Gwen, I'm giving you a mission. Investigate the Spiderweb organization. Chapter 24, It's only one night, will anything go wrong? Seeing Gwen don her battle suit and prepare to exit through the window, George frowned and muttered, can't you use the door? Gwen stuck out her tongue, I'm used to it. Then, she leaped out of the window, her spiderwebs shooting through the air and swaying into the distance. Suddenly, a spider-like phantom caught up with Gwen, blocking her path. It's me, Russell. Russell's voice rang out. This is a spider mark I created, with location and warning functions. When your spider sense is triggered, its warning function will also be activated. At that time, I can provide support through location. Spiderweb creatures are more dangerous than vampires, be careful, Gwen asked suspiciously. This spider mark doesn't have any listening or surveillance functions, does it? Your spider sense has listening and surveillance functions, Russell countered, then explained. I divided the spider totem I obtained from Earth 1610 into 2 parts. Most of it is in this mark, absorbing it will enhance your power. A small portion is with me. The 2 parts can transmit spider sensing signals through some kind of quantum induction. Oh, Gwen nodded. If you encounter danger, will my mark also be triggered? Yes, the signals are interconnected, however, I usually only play one-sided games, so it won't trigger. Okay, thank you, Russell. I really like this gift. It has been confirmed that, despite all efforts to save him, the renowned philanthropist Mr. Wilson Grant Fisk has died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Mr. Fisk asked us to mourn for Mr. Wilson Grant Fisk before his death. Kingpin is dead. George couldn't help but exclaim upon seeing the news broadcast on television. As a high-ranking member of the NYPD, he knew all too well who Kingpin was and what kind of power he possessed. New York would be in turmoil tonight and for a long time to come. "Sorry, Russell, I have to go back to the police station." He had planned to watch a show with Russell to cultivate their father-in-law-son-in-law relationship beforehand. But the matter was of great importance, and he had to return to the police station to oversee things. "George, go ahead and get busy, be careful." As he spoke, Russell separated a wisp of his spiritual energy and wrapped it around George's wrist. George's job was quite dangerous. It was good to have some insurance to prevent accidents. By the way, was it already morning in Nepal? Stepping out, Russell arrived at the Ancient One's courtyard. Teleportation portals were really useful. "You're here, Master Russell, have a seat. Would you like some breakfast together?" The Ancient One gestured for Russell to sit down. "A beef ball, a steamed pork ribs, lean pork rice noodle rolls, and a glass of milk." "Thank you, Master Ancient One," Russell said as he sat down, rattling off the menu. "Help yourself, it's my friend's shop." A portal opened, revealing a dim sum restaurant across the street. After a moment's thought, Russell released his energy. He carefully brought over the breakfast he needed. He was already seated and didn't want to get up. "Oh, you've even learned how to project energy. Practice more, your control precision isn't quite there yet." After saying that, the two stopped talking and went back to eating. Although he had just eaten dinner at George's house not long ago, Russell's physique had already digested it all. Now, his daily energy consumption mainly came from absorbing light and heat energy. Food was just a habit. Like the Ancient One, who was clearly a spirit, yet still went to bed early and woke up early every day, eating and drinking tea. "How did your practice go yesterday?" The Ancient One, taking on the role of teacher, checked on Russell's progress. "Reading the past was fine, but I encountered trouble when deducing the future." Russell explained the problems he encountered using the time stone yesterday. "Too many branches, too much energy consumption. The energy consumption problem is almost unsolvable." The Ancient One explained the energy consumption problem first. "The Infinity Stones are manifestations of the authority of the infinite multiverse, capable of drawing upon its energy. In terms of energy alone, we are far inferior to the multiverse," she continued. "While there are many branches, only the key choices will affect the future." Russell nodded. "However, if the initial choice is wrong, subsequent deductions will be overridden by reality." The Ancient One looked at Russell with surprise. "You've tried it?" "Yes, then how do you think we should solve it?" The Ancient One didn't offer a solution but instead asked Russell what he wanted to do. "Use deduction as a supplement, and follow the path you want to take. What if external factors interfere? Everything in the world interacts," the Ancient One continued. Russell didn't speak, only made a fist gesture. Since he wanted to follow his own path, encountering obstacles meant solving them. That's a good method." The Ancient One nodded in agreement, not going into further details about the solution. Russell didn't ask any more questions. Suddenly, as if she had seen something, the Ancient One asked Russell, "You've already interfered with the future?" "Yes," Russell nodded. "Last night, he had dealt with Kingpin and Murdoch ahead of schedule. This was undoubtedly interference with George and Gwen's future. Let's see. The future isn't that simple," the Ancient One reminded him, but didn't explain. "Lessons learned are worse than lessons learned. Besides, it wasn't a big deal." Seeing that the Ancient One didn't explain, Russell didn't press further, but instead brought up another matter. "Sorcerer, is there a spell that can make everyone in the world forget something?" Though it was a question, Russell's tone was quite certain. In Spider-Man, No Way Back, Dr. Strange used this spell to help Spider-Man resolve the crisis of his identity being exposed. Ancient One chuckled. "What, you want to learn? I'll teach you." Russell smiled too. "Sorcerer, can you cast a spell for me? I still want to spend my time researching portal magic." Ancient One's face darkened, then she asked, "Aren't you going to research the time stone anymore?" This kid Russell, why is he always thinking about that portal? "It's almost there, as long as it works. I don't care about the passage or reversal of time, I only care about the events I've experienced." Russell answered Ancient One first, then asked curiously, "Sorcerer, if someone altered the past, would it create a new parallel universe, or would the current universe also be altered? What do you think?" Ancient One still asked Russell's opinion first. "No past," Russell wasn't sure. "I vaguely feel that space-time is one." There is only the present, no past or future. Ancient One looked at Russell in shock. Is it a feeling, or is it just your belief? The former might be materialism, or it might be wrong. The latter is idealism, which doesn't need to be considered. I sensed it. The Ancient One remained silent, seemingly processing the news. After a long while, a mirror image enveloped the two, then a portal opened, transporting them to New York. Look, the future you interfered with has unfolded. A dozen or so New York police officers, using police cars as cover, surrounded the ghost spider with guns drawn. George was protecting the ghost spider. The future is different now, Sorcerer. Chapter 25, Am I the Mastermind? The future is different, Sorcerer. In the original plot, George alone, armed with a gun, interrogated the ghost spider about his identity. Russell's predicted future is 9/10 similar to the current scene. The difference is that Gwen is unharmed. In the prediction, Gwen was in danger because she was injured. The current situation seems perilous, but with an unharmed Gwen, she can escape unscathed. Is it different? The Ancient One asked. Then will you continue to intervene? The Ancient One didn't know what Russell's predicted future was like. He had already retired and didn't need to keep an eye on this all day. Otherwise, wouldn't his retirement be in vain? Of course, Russell chuckled and stepped out of the mirror space. When you cast the spell later, please erase my existence as well, this kid. The Ancient One raised an eyebrow. Just like that, he walked out of my mirror space? He didn't even need a portal. Stepping out of the mirror space, Russell appeared, sighing inwardly. Sigh, why can't I cast spells through the mirror space? I'm still too inexperienced, I need to practice. He telepathically connected with George. George, this is Russell. I'm taking Gwen away directly, this will be forgotten soon. Figure out your own explanation. The portal opened beneath their feet, and Russell and Gwen vanished, entering the mirror dimension. The Ancient One raised an eyebrow again. Good heavens, whose mirror dimension is this? You keep coming and going like this, don't you care about my reputation as the former Sorcerer Supreme? Russell suddenly slapped his forehead hard. Russell, what's wrong? Gwen asked with concern. The Ancient One also looked over. Could it be that forcibly entering and exiting the mirror dimension had drained his mental energy? Nothing, I just suddenly realized how stupid I am. Really? Russell shook his head, indicating he was fine. I only knew that the portal could connect the mirror dimension to the outside world, allowing free entry and exit. I didn't know I could open the portal first and then cast spells through it. Simply put, in the mirror dimension, mental energy can't leave, so spells can't be cast. But through the portal, mental energy can leave, and spells can be cast. Gwen looked puzzled. What was Russell talking about? The Ancient One, is there a difference? It saves you a few steps, also, it makes it seem more mysterious. Russell looked at Gwen and asked curiously, by the way, Gwen, what happened? The mastermind was taken down, the timing didn't add up, but the event still occurred. Gwen was puzzled, I don't know either. It seems like it's because Kingpin died, and his faction started fighting each other. Tonight, there are thugs, gangsters, and police everywhere. I was surrounded by the police without even realizing it. Russell was silent. He was responsible for Kingpin's death, he was the one who started the infighting among his factions, the death of Murdoch. He was the one who persuaded Gwen to go out tonight, when George tried to stop her. Good heavens, was I the mastermind behind it all? Russell turned his gaze to the Ancient One, seeking clarification. Sensing Russell's gaze, the Ancient One was quite pleased, stroked her beard, and slowly said, one thing, the time, place, cause, process, and result have all changed, leaving only one similarity. Is this still the same thing? Isn't this two separate things? Gwen wondered. Could these sorcerers explain it more clearly? Ancient One nodded, waiting for Russell's answer. From Gwen's perspective, she was right. Russell didn't rush to answer, he thought of a joke from before his time travel. Spider-Man's inescapable fate, the death of Uncle Ben. The remaining similarity is fate. Ancient One nodded in satisfaction, you're teachable. We can choose to submit to fate, change fate, or fight against fate. The prerequisite is discovering fate. Ancient One continued to guide. So, Russell, have you discovered it? What were they talking about? Gwen's gaze swept back and forth between Russell and Ancient One. Ever since Russell became that sorcerer, he'd become increasingly cryptic. Russell had a guess, but couldn't confirm it. Guesses relied on wisdom and a tiny bit of understanding of the plot. Confirmation relied on strength, raw power. Russell shook his head, then said, "Someone's coming," his guess, to make Gwen leave the original universe and become one of the Spider-Men maintaining the Spider-Verse. Outside the mirror space, the police had already left. A portal, not belonging to Kamartaj, radiating a crimson color, opened. A tall man in a red, purple, and blue Spider-Man suit led the way, exuding an aura of ferocity and danger. This was Miguel O'Hara, leader of the League of Spider-Men, Spider-Man 2099. The mirror image dissipated, revealing the three members of the Ancient Ones group. "You don't belong to this universe. You've interfered with the workings of space-time." Miguel's cold gaze swept over the Ancient One and Russell. "Who are you, and where do you come from?" "Oh, these young people are quite something these days," the Ancient One chuckled. "Earth 616, the Ancient One, the Ancient One? The Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj?" Miguel asked in surprise. The League of Spider-Men was an organization spanning the multiverse, traversing it using the spider web of fate. He had naturally heard of the Sorcerer Organization, Kamartaj. The Ancient One nodded with a smile. Miguel's expression relaxed slightly. He had initially thought the space-time interference on Earth 65 was due to an evil villain. But with the Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj present, it was likely a misunderstanding. A clear explanation would save us from a fierce battle. "The Spider-Man Alliance, Miguel O'Hara, greets the Ancient One." Miguel introduced himself first, then asked tactfully, "Ancient One, could you please explain the situation to me?" The Ancient One turned her gaze to Russell. Instantly, Russell became the focus of everyone's attention. Earth 404, Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj and Sorcerer Spider-Man Russell. The next Sorcerer Supreme will also be a Sorcerer Supreme. The Ancient One raised an eyebrow, but didn't expose Russell. Miguel frowned. He knew Kamartaj, and he knew the Sorcerer Supreme. But Sorcerer Spider-Man? What was that? And who was Russell? "Greetings, Sorcerer Russell." Though puzzled, Miguel maintained his courtesy. Russell remained silent, pondering how to explain. Dealing with righteous people was troublesome. If it were a villain, he could simply say, "I, Russell, have no need to explain my actions to others." A flash of inspiration struck him. "Spacetime hasn't been disturbed." A flash of anger crossed Miguel's face. "We detected spacetime fluctuations. What was disturbed is Spider-Man's web of fate." Russell bluffed. "You're not the real Spider-Man, nor a sorcerer. You don't understand the web of fate and the multiverse's spacetime concept. That was just a fluctuation from Spider-Man's web of fate." Miguel's face darkened. "I am Spider-Man. Although I haven't been bitten by radioactive spiders, can't stick to walls, and don't have spider sense, I am Spider-Man." Russell simply stared at Miguel. The balance of power had shifted. Could you explain to me what the Spider-Man Alliance is? What is the web of fate? What is the multiverse's spacetime concept?" To be continued. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.